High five. I'll take the mic for you. I got her. Thanks.
Well, it's going to be hard to beat that, so we'll move to number 7, approval. Is there a supplementary agenda?
Yes, there is. Council, on Friday afternoon, I sent out a supplementary agenda, item 19B, Community Partnership Fund Committee, and item 20C, the Integrity Commissioner Investigation Interim Report relating to serious breach of protocol.
Okay, number 8, disclosures of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, for open session, agenda items, and the general nature thereof. Councillor Scotchy?
Disclose interest in 10A, very close friend of the family for 40 years. So.
Councillor Solomon?
11A, Your Worship, involves a client's property.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Caniff. Spoke with the WDSS girls officer winning championship basketball team was supposed to be here tonight, but I spoke with the coach last night, Miss Janine Day. She's not feeling well. She's got one of those spring colds, and so does a handful of the players on the team as well. So they had to cancel coming this evening. But Councillor Carmen McGregor and myself are going to arrange a time to meet with them at the school and make sure that they get their certificates. So once again, congratulations to the WDSS girls basketball team.
Oh, shoot. Planning meeting process. The process to be followed for each application will be as follows. 1, the item will be announced. 2, the mayor will ask if there is anyone present other than the applicant or his or her agent with an interest in the item, and to indicate so by raising their hand. If there is no one present indicating an interest in the item, council will proceed as follows. 1, there will be no presentation by administration. 2, administration will be asked if they wish to make any additional comments regarding the report or recommendations. 3, council will be asked if it has any questions of administration. 4, the applicant will be asked if he or she has any comments. 5, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. 6, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. If someone other than the applicant or the applicant's agent indicates an interest in the item, council will proceed as follows. 1, administration will present the report. 2, council will be asked if it has any questions of administration. 3, individuals or their agent present with an interest in the item other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address, and address council with their comments, concerns, or questions. 4, council will be asked if it has any questions of each presenter. 5, the applicant will be asked if he or she has any comments. 6, council will be asked if it has any questions of the applicant. 7, administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. 8, council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the item. Notice. If any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk of the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal a decision to the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as party to the appeal. Notice of passing. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website. All persons receiving notice of this meeting will receive a notice of passing of a bylaw relating to any of the planning items presented here tonight if approved, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of passing or a notice of council's decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Thank you. Item 10A.
Application for zoning bylaw amendment 1815513 Ontario Inc., 26 Talbot Street East, community of Blenheim, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or her agent present? If so, please raise your hand. Identified? Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, what action would council like to take with regard to the application? Councillor Thompson?
I'd be happy to move the recommendation as presented.
Councillor Latimer?
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 10B.
10B, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, cannabis production facilities.
Is the applicant, his or her agent present? If so, please raise your hand. Sorry. Is there anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? If so, please raise your hand. Okay. Noted. Anyone else? Over there. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. To provide some clarity and context to support the planning report that council has received, I have a short presentation and would be then taking questions after this presentation or after the other individuals here to speak have spoken. The scope of the proposed amendments being presented to council tonight are regarding what is defined as a cannabis production facility. Across Canada, these facilities are licensed through Health Canada under what are referred to as a standard license or a micro-licensed classification. A third category of cannabis production facility are unlicensed, and they are registered by Health Canada, and these are facilities that produce cannabis for individuals with a medical document. What's out of scope in these recommendations are retail cannabis stores where the general public could purchase cannabis products. These are licensed by the province of Ontario and not subject to municipal zoning bylaws. Also, it is not part of these amendments are personal growing of cannabis and the personal use of cannabis. Some background includes the passing of the marijuana for medical purposes regulations by the Government of Canada in June 2013. The enactment of these laws in Canada created a new commercial industry for cannabis production. Later that year, policies and regulations were developed for Chatham-Kent, and in January of 2014, Chatham-Kent Council adopted new official plan policy and zoning regulations for licensed production facilities for medical marijuana. Since that time, there are currently 3 companies in various stages of development. These include Agmedica, Medicine, and Curative Cannabis. A number of other properties have been zoned for this use, but to our knowledge have not began development of those sites. What changed last year is that on October 17th, the Government of Canada passed the Cannabis Act, This created a legal and regulatory framework for controlling the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis in Canada. These laws do a number of things, but where they align with local land use planning is that it provides for the legal production of cannabis. The framework sets out, similar to medical marijuana production, that producers must be licensed. These licensed producers must conform to stringent compliance protocols and enforcement measures by Health Canada and are subject to regular audits and inspections. These measures and inspections review such things as physical security of a property, quality assurance of the product, odor controls, security clearances, the use of pesticides and water, among others. After the passing of the first laws that allowed the licensed producers to produce medical marijuana in 2013, in 2016, Health Canada introduced a new regulation called the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulation. This was the Government of Canada's response to the Federal Court of Canada's 2016 decision, Allard versus Canada. This decision found that requiring individuals to get their medical marijuana only from licensed producers violated liberty and security rights protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The court essentially found that individuals who require marijuana for medical purposes did not have reasonable access. This opened the door for Health Canada to create an unlicensed cannabis production facility through the registration of sites for personal and designated medical cannabis production. Under a registration, people at certain sites can produce cannabis for their own medical purposes, or they can be designated by some other person to produce cannabis for them. In the end, a person can produce cannabis for 2 people or 2 registrations with a maximum of 4 registrations per property. A designated producer must take reasonable steps to ensure the security of the cannabis in their possession, and for outdoor production, a registered property must not be adjacent to a sensitive use such as a school, playground, daycare facility, or other public space. As these facilities are unlicensed and generally unregulated, no odor controls are required, among other measures. When considering the changes to the federal legislation under the Cannabis Act, we turn to the planning tools available to us under the Planning Act. The first planning tool we look at is municipal zoning. Zoning generally sets out specific geographic areas or zones where any use can be permitted. Considering cannabis production facilities, it is recommended that they be permitted in the agricultural zone, the general industrial zone, and the rural industrial zones. This is consistent, and there is no change to where these uses are permitted under the existing medical marijuana production facilities. One change that's being recommended is that a site-specific zoning amendment is not required to establish these facilities at a certain property. So since 2014, a property owner would apply to the municipality for a site-specific zone change to specifically permit a medical marijuana production facility in one of those 3 zones. The change being presented tonight would have it so these uses are permitted as of right, just like other uses permitted in those zones today. Another way that zoning can be used to regulate land uses is through the imposition of setbacks and other regulations. The recommendations before Council tonight propose setbacks from sensitive land uses for production facilities that are 100 meters in rural areas and 75 meters in urban areas. These are consistent with the current setbacks in the zoning bylaw for medical marijuana production facilities. Under the Cannabis Act, a new classification of license is available, which I had mentioned. This is a micro license. A micro cultivation license would apply to a licensed producer who is proposing to grow less than 200 square meters of cannabis. In general, that would be approximately the space of this chambers between me and the end of the room, wall to wall, or generally the area on a hockey rink between the center red line and a blue line. It is not proposed that these facilities are subject to the same setbacks as larger or standard licensed facilities, but rather be subject to the existing setbacks in those respective zones which are listed. Another planning tool that it's available to the municipality to implement these uses is site plan control. Site plan control is a tool used when a property is being developed to coordinate the developer's needs as well as the interests of the community. The process is designed to ensure that developments are constructed in a way that's aligned with the municipal goals to provide services and plan for public safety. These often look at things like building location, parking, setbacks, stormwater management, lighting, buffering, etc. As such, it's largely a review of the layout and functionality of the site from a technical perspective. It's not meant to control the design of the interior of buildings or the manner and standards of their construction. The recommendations before council would recommend that all new construction in urban areas be required to seek site plan approval, and that all new construction of facilities operating under a standard license or larger producers in rural areas also be subject to site plan approval. It is recommended that certain classes of development are exempted from site plan approval. These would include new construction of new facilities operating under a micro license in rural areas. The footprint and size and makeup of these facilities would not be much different than a typical farm and farm buildings. And currently, agricultural buildings such as farm buildings are exempt from site plan control, so somewhat taking that approach for these smaller facilities. The meeting tonight is a public meeting under the Planning Act, so it was open for public comment in writing through the public notice, in which 2 letters of support were received and 1 letter of concern. Outside of the planning process, the municipality has received a number of comments and concerns from the public regarding odor, primarily related to the personal and designated medical production facilities. These were the unlicensed facilities used for the growing of medical cannabis. Therefore, it is recommended that recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the Planning Services Report, dated March 6, 2019, be postponed to the May 13th, 2019 council meeting, and that no further public notice is required. This would allow administration an opportunity to investigate further the enforcement and regulatory issues that might arise from zoning these unlicensed facilities, as well as take into consideration any of the feedback and discussion that may occur tonight after my presentation. But alternatively, if council was generally comfortable with the recommendations regarding licensed facilities, the existing standard producers, potential new standard and micro producers under the Health Canada license, an alternative recommendation would be that council could amend the proposed definition of cannabis production facility put forward in the zoning bylaw to remove the words registered with or. This would align the zoning bylaw to orient itself toward licensed producers only, and it would allow administration time to conduct further research around unlicensed and registered facilities. In that case, it is recommended to move forward with the recommendations in the report with a change to recommendation number 2 with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment, that it would be adopted as amended by the definition. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
The first speaker, please.
I'll play with it, Matt, sir. If it doesn't work, we'll get somebody young to run the technology. Your Worship and Council, thank you for having me here this evening. I want to give you a little bit about our story. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. My name is Dr. Trevor Henry. I've been a veterinarian in the area for 27 years. Currently, I'm one of the founders and Chief Executive Officer of Agmedica Bioscience Incorporated. We are a licensed producer, or an LP, of medical-grade cannabis, and that allows us to sell to adult use, the medical market in Canada, and very soon we'll be very proud to announce that we'll be selling to medical patients in the European Union as well. The 5 founders are all from Chatham. I'm the only import. I've been here for 27 years. I'm originally from Prince Edward Island, but the other 4 guys all grew up in Chatham-Kent. The DNA of our company is really industry. It's really strong in 2 areas. It's very strong in large-scale agriculture production, and it's very strong in science as well. 3 of our founders grew crops outdoor, thousands of acres. They actually grew inside in greenhouses as well. They cultivated tomatoes and things like that. And they had this niche grow of indoor mushroom cultivation that was really interesting. The quality control in the mushroom industry is crazy. So if your temperature gradient is out more than 1 degree Celsius, your crop is essentially ruined. It turns out that is just the perfect infrastructure to grow cannabis. So we grow it on a tiered system. You're going to see a corporate video in a few minutes. Yeah, the other 4 founders, like I said, actually are very strong on the science end of things. Obviously, I'm a veterinarian. One of my partners, Nick, is a pharmacist, owned and operated his own pharmacy in Blenheim, Ontario. We actually started a methadone clinic to really help with the opioid crisis in Chatham-Kent. Behind me, Dr. Owen Van Cowenberg is one of our scientists. Owen has a very eclectic background. He actually has a PhD in plant science. He was actually doing his MBA at the same time until his wife told him to pick one. So he proceeded on with a PhD. Owen has a long history in global pharma development, where he brought over 100 products in the health and wellness and pharmaceutical world to the market. With this, our other scientist, Vince, has a PhD in chemistry. He's not with us as well, but chemistry is really interesting from cannabis because there's a lot of oils and associated products with that. So that really enables us to build a whole differentiated portfolio of products like gel caps and transdermal gels and rubs and lotions and all kinds of things for the medical market. Vince worked with Big Pharma as well for 20 years, but he had an interesting position where he actually took a paintball factory and converted the paintball factory into a gel cap factory, where they actually sold to the 6 biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Kind of an interesting note. We are currently in 4 buildings in Chatham-Kent. We actually own about 650,000 square feet of buildings. They're all repurposed buildings, so it's really given those buildings a brand new life. Our head count is over 150 people now. We continue to add all skill sets. We have everything from horticulture, science, finance, sales and marketing, regulatory, legal, the whole gamut. It's interesting with cannabis, the way the regulations work. You really have to run a totally vertically integrated business. So we're proud to attract all skill sets. We're really proud in Chatham-Kent that we're a living wage employer as well. It's worked out great for us that we get a lot of the students from the Ridgetown College, from the horticulture programs as well, a lot of farm kids that I grew up with and things like that, so it's wonderful. The focus of our company is really strong on the medical side of things. We do a lot of our research outside of this country, just really for speed reasons. We have an investment of about 10% of an Israeli company called MedC. That's an R&D company in Israel. We'll actually probably increasing that to 20%. And we have 4 areas of focus. One is a form of skin cancer called cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. The second one is PTSD or anxiety. The third one is inflammation. And the 4th one is brain cancer. It's interesting, we're actually at the point right now where our first product for the skin cancer is actually being released in Israel for 2 terminal patients for compassionate care. So we're really excited about that. Other things going on globally, we have actually an investment, 25% investment in an Italian extraction company called Herbalia. It actually allows us to do oil extraction from cannabis to allow us to make the hard shell capsules, the soft shell capsules, the rubs, the creams, and all that stuff for the medical market. Probably enough of me talking. I think it's much more helpful if I can show you guys a quick little corporate video, if I can work the technology.
AgMedica Bioscience Incorporated is a licensed producer of cannabis. We are located in Chatham-Kent, Ontario. We grow indoors in 660,000 square feet. The vision of AgMedica Bioscience Incorporated is to be a global leader in the development and commercialization of cannabis-derived products for the health and wellness market.
Both Canada and internationally, the world is waking up to the benefits, both clinical and recreationally. I think AgMedica is a leader because, firstly, the grow facility is world-class, probably the best I've seen. And secondly, the strength of the management team, and particularly the clinical and therapeutic expertise that sits within the management team, is second to none.
AgMedica has taken a totally different approach to growing cannabis. We grow indoor in very strict climate-controlled, temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled environment in pods, smaller rooms, 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, that allow us to grow on tiers. We're growing in 3 tiers now. We're eventually going to 4 and then 5 tiers.
A consistent environment really leads to a consistent plant and be able to have the same product come to market harvest after harvest. First, we try to make our plants consistent in the propagation room, where we really standardize the sizes of our cuttings that we take off our mother plants. And when we need to get a clean line of genetics, we'd go in and grow our mothers out from tissue and propagate out from that. A really important aspect to the quality of cannabis is taste and odor. Those are influenced by terpenes and the amount of terpenes that you preserve from harvest to post-processing.
Another indicator we use for bud ripeness is the trichomes, which are the crystal-like structures on the buds. Those are actually the little factories where the THC and CBD is all held.
From cutting to a harvestable flowered plant is about 12 weeks.
I think right now that nurses and healthcare providers are being exposed to medical cannabis and understanding that this has been a treatment options for many years. At AgMedica, we launched an initiative, Excellence in Cannabinoid Therapy Administration. Our role is to support medical teams, clinicians, healthcare providers who would like to access medical cannabis treatment options for their patients. And one of my main roles is to support them in education, help them feel comfortable prescribing. And that's what I enjoy about what I'm doing here as a medical care liaison.
I believe with respect to cannabis, we've just really touched the tip of the iceberg in development of different products for the human and the veterinary markets. Part of the excitement of being involved in the cannabis sector from a Canadian standpoint is, for the first time in our lives, we have a chance to be a world leader in a brand new industry, and that's exciting.
Well, who wouldn't be excited in a market that offers such phenomenal growth? I've worked in retail for probably 30 years, and the growth that's offered within cannabis is multiples of what you can achieve in other markets.
And that's a wrap. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Can we get the second speaker, please? Your Honorable Mayor, my fellow council members, ladies and gentlemen of Chatham-Kent, my name is Jason Guttridge. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. It really is, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be where I am today. I am a resident of Merlin, Ontario. I was born and raised on a small farm, come from pretty small beginnings. I became educated, I got into finance, and I did many things throughout my career. A couple years ago, my brother and myself began a bit of a feasibility study, if you will. We began looking into the economic opportunities within cannabis and how we could apply those to not only our small farm, but towards Merlin and towards Chatham-Kent. After several countless hours, many phone calls, late nights, spending a lot of money, doing a lot of fun things, just trying to research this industry, we came to the conclusion that we could grow cannabis and we can be a part of this growing market along with AgMedica, but looking at the industry in a different light. With legalization on October 17th, we are focused in on the recreational aspect. I will not outdoor grow cannabis the same quality and the same consistency and density that an indoor hydroponic facility could create. This has been going on for years. They take care of this medicinal stuff. I simply cannot compete with them on that scale. What I can do outdoors with cannabis is grow cheaply, and I can provide to a small niche market in organic cannabis. I don't look to grow exponentially and become public overnight. I'm doing this modestly, and I'm going to do this conservatively for my community and for Chatham-Kent. We are going to target organic cannabis. We don't want to have pesticides. We want to keep our roots small. We want to support our small community. We're going to donate 0.5% of all our profits back into Merlin. And we're going to keep that as local as possible because I believe in that community. I was born and raised there, and I went to public school there. It has always been a dream of mine to have an industry come through that I knew that I could stand up for and that I could be a part of. With the legalization of cannabis and with the changes of our bylaws right now into supporting outdoor cannabis, it is a significant opportunity to myself and to my community. And that is why I stand before you today, quite humbly, looking for your encouragement and your approval on a small venture such as myself. I don't want to stress it enough that I'm not here as a big organization and I'm doing these big, great things. I'm starting small, and I'm going to work grassroots, and I'm going to start with the shovel. And I thank you for your time here today. And I welcome your input and your opinions. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Guttridge. What action would council like to take with regard to the application? Yes. So there's two options on the table. One is a postponement, or one is a modification to through a bit of the wording. To either case allows them more time to work on the one aspect. Councilor McGrail?
I'd like to move that we reword to licensed growers that are strict to the Health Canada rules.
Can I get a seconder on that? Councillor Finn?
I'll second it.
Questions? Councillor B. McGregor?
Yeah, can we just re-clarify what the outcome of that, if that motion passed, what that would be?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. With the removal of these three words from the proposed definition of cannabis production facility, the entire zoning and official plan regime set out would only apply to licensed producers. It would not apply to unlicensed or registered growers who grow medical cannabis. I should point out that since 2016, these unlicensed or registered growers have been legal under the laws of Canada, and they currently exist today in our community and will likely continue to exist. But they're not currently covered today by our zoning bylaws. So they will continue to be not covered by the Chatham-Kent zoning bylaw until such time we receive different direction from council or bring recommendations forward.
Councillor Kirkwood-White?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ryan, I have a question with regard to future developments and the need to not have them in multi-tenant buildings, to have them stand alone so that we don't have to worry about sharing space with other businesses. And I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity, not to hold up the process, but is there an opportunity to incorporate that somehow?
Your Worship, so I think, just so I have this clear, Councillor Kirkwood-White, your concern is if a licensed facility would be in the same building as another tenant, is that correct? I think that's difficult to do through zoning, frankly. I think that's, if it's permitted under the licensing, I don't know how we would regulate that any further through our regulations. Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the minimum distances and thinking, if there was a multi-tenant building and there were other tenants on the other side of the wall, we wouldn't be honoring the minimums.
So, Your Worship, I think the issue there is it's one structure in the same zoning and those uses are permitted. What our setback says, it's 75 meters from a residential or open space type zone, so it's difficult to apply internal regulations like that within an existing building.
Councillor Stacacci, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Just a question directed towards you. So the other option you're talking about in basically prolonging it a little bit, would that give you more time to then draft up something that would be maybe beneficial to both? Would that be something that the recommendations would, because here's the thing is if we move something now with just a word changing, are we making a decision that's going to negatively affect, in the future? If you brought something to us to look at, and, right now we're looking at either moving ahead or accepting it now, shouldn't we be able to fully look at both options before we make a decision?
That is an option available to council. Through the research in creating these recommendations and conversations and input so far, there's been no indication that there should be changes to the regulations toward the licensed producers, but rather the regulated producers. But we would take council's direction in that regard.
So you're obviously there are recommendations. You're comfortable with just changing the wording, and you think that's a good decision as regards to recommendation?
That's correct.
Correct.
Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you. Through you, your mayor. So should we move forward with the licensing that in fact enables licensed facilities in this category within Chatham-Kent to move forward with more clarity around what zoning regulations would be? So in essence, they know more sooner if you fall under the category of being licensed.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The other question I have is actually around research and processing. And so this allows research and processing to happen and to take place in the zoning areas that were outlined. What about research and processing in other areas, like in downtowns?
Okay. This relates to actually one of the public concerns that were received in response to this application, where it was proposed that research and processing of cannabis be permitted in the downtown central business district zone. This would be a departure from the fundamental land uses that currently exist in our downtown areas. So research and processing of any kind are currently not permitted in our downtown zones now. So cannabis is not being specifically left out of these areas. The proposed amendments would create an opportunity for research and processing in areas with industrial or agricultural zoning. In general, downtowns are envisioned to be hubs for retail, service, entertainment, and residential uses. Adding other types of uses changes the fundamental direction that Chatham-Kent has set for these neighborhoods in opening the door to other types of employment uses, which would displace traditional downtown uses. This path would be a new planning exercise on its own to consider the form our downtowns should take over time. That's generally why these are not recommended in commercial areas.
Right. And then just in follow-up to that, so like in theory, it's 5 or 6 years down the road from now, and we're looking at consuming cannabis in other areas, and there's a downtown health food store or downtown bakery. At that time, when cannabis is more like an ingredient that somebody would use, that kind of activity or planning use, that doesn't fall really under this research and processing that's being discussed tonight.
No, I wouldn't think so. If the laws change that these products are marketed in that way, I would suggest that existing uses in commercial areas such as supermarkets, restaurants, bakeries that are already permitted would simply incorporate those new opportunities into those businesses.
Okay, great, thank you. That answers my question. And just a quick comment, I think it's important that we not over-regulate cannabis to prevent economic development and growth in the future. Because while we're in this transition, it may seem like an uncomfortable topic to discuss, or it's new to some people, but I think if we go more towards over-regulating it, then we could restrict economic development in an area where CK could really be a champion across Canada. And so thank you very much for this. I'll be supporting this.
Councillor Solomon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question through Your Worship to the Speaker. Are you also proceeding to do work on retail bylaw with respect to cannabis? I have no issue with what you proposed tonight, but I just want to know that there's obviously a large distinction between this, which is an industrial use, as opposed to ultimately retail shops that we've already approved but haven't got zoning in place for. So are you working on that too? And I realize it's somewhat separate than what's facing us tonight, but I've got you here now, so I'm asking.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Solomon. I know we worked on that several months ago when the province introduced the regulation for retail sales. So the short answer is no, we're not working on a bylaw because the regulation does not allow us to regulate retail stores at this time. It's strictly a licensing regime through the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario. As most people are aware, at this point, they've issued a call for only 25 licenses to be issued this year. We'll see where it goes in the future, but at this point in time, we're not working on any specific bylaw around retail.
So at this point in time, they could locate next to a church, school, if the province said is it simply that the province is controlling the location every bit as much as they control things under the Green Energy Act and other provincial legislation that says, in effect, it's not up to you in your municipal planning?
Yes, you have to make an application through the AGCO. There are regulations. The only distance regulation in that is 150 meters from a school boundary. Currently is what doesn't mean when applications come forward, municipalities or community members have 15 days to comment if they have concerns. That's how the process is currently laid out.
And that'll come before us, I take it, as a council, if that happens, correct?
Yeah, currently there's no license applications that I'm aware of that were in Chatham. So
Fine. Thank you for the update.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Item 11, announcement by Mayor. Consideration of proposed declaration to close part of the road allowance known as part of Erie Street, Registered Plan 87, Geographic Township of Howard, Municipality of Chatham-Kent, depicted as Part 2, 24R 10332. The property being considered to be closed legally described as part of Erie Street, Registered Plan 87, Geographic Township of Howard, Municipality of Chatham-Kent, depicted as Part 2, 24R 10332. During the week of February 25th, 2019, a notice of intention to close the above noted road allowance was published in the Ridgetown Independent newspaper for a 2-week period. The same notice was also advertised on the municipal website beginning on February 25th, 2019. I will now invite any person wishing to be heard to approach the podium and give reasons why their lands will be adversely affected by this declaration to close this portion of the road allowance. Seeing none, how would council like to proceed? Councilor Pinsino?
Thank you, Worship. I will move the recommendations 1 and 2.
Councilor Bondi?
I'll second it, thanks.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Item 12, deputations. Councilor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Previous on the list of deputations was he was removed from that list in closed session, and I'd like to put forward a motion to add his name back to the list of deputations.
Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In order to do so, according to the procedural bylaw, we'll have to suspend the rules, and that requires a 2/3 vote. So we will vote by a show of hands if we'd like to proceed with that, and we'll require a 2/3 vote, which is 12 councillors to vote in support of that. Yes.
Can I make a point of order on that? If we don't feel that that should have been voted on in closed session, rather it should be voted on in open session, do we need 2/3 to bring that to open session?
I would say yes. Currently, Mr. Robertson is not on the list, and so in order to add him under the procedural bylaw 2C, it says to add or remove a deputation. So in order to add him to the list, we would require the suspending of the rules.
Can I get a second to the motion? Councillor Harrigan. Any questions? Councillor B. McGregor?
So are we voting on the 2/3 to bring it back and vote on the motion, or just it needs to pass by 2/3?
It needs to pass by 2/3.
Okay, so we are indicating our vote if we would like to add Mr. Robertson back onto the deputation list.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Seeing none, do we have it up here? Okay, but just to make sure that we know what we're voting on. Yes, let's make it electronic.
Okay, Meredith, could you please add that?
And can we get it up on the screen so we know what we're voting on? Okay, we put it to vote.
Councillor Solomon?
You just said it was by a show of hands. Now it is not?
The chair asked for it to be electronic vote.
Did he?
All votes are in. Okay, change. Okay, you can indicate how you would want your vote to be. There we go. All votes are in. Motion fails 5-12.
Thank you. What are the deputations tonight?
So, Council, we have 9 deputations this evening. I have broken them into the different reports that they'll be speaking on. So the first report will be item 16A, the motion of Councillor Carmen McGregor regarding developmental charges bylaw. We have 3 speakers to speak on that item. The 3 speakers are Hector DeLange, Jordan Apers, and Jeff Van Royboys. I will remind all speakers for this evening they have a maximum of 5 minutes, and we'll have the timer up on the screen. So if I can ask Hector to come up and then Jordan on deck. Thank you.
City Council, Your Worship the Mayor, City Councilors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here for the good for agriculture for Kent County.
Sorry, can you give us your name and address, please?
I've got that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right.
And I'm here to speak against the motion. My name is Hector DeLange, and I farm with my wife, Marilyn, and my son, Mark, out at Cedar Springs on Talbot Trail. We grow about 250 acres of fruit on 450 acres of land. We grow a variety of fruit, and of course it takes a lot of labor to grow this and to harvest this fruit and get it ready for market. We employ 4 full-time people, and we employ between 35 and 40 help from between 8 to 10 months a year. Of course, students in the summertime. Our policy is Canadians first. And if we can't fill our job vacancies on the farm, we bring in workers from other countries, and especially we bring them in from Jamaica. I've been in this business since I'm 15. Why I say that? By saying that, I don't have to tell you how old I am. I speak against the motion for the following reasons. Like I said before, we have a first Canadians policy that if Canadians want to work, they have work on our farms. We can't get qualified Canadians to do our work. We have to bring in workers from other countries, some for 4 to 8 months and some for as short as 6 weeks. We supply housing for these workers as we are already paying for the water that they are using. This additional charge would make our housing very expensive. I'm not here to judge that the PUC needs more money to operate a good system, but the way they want to charge, to me, is not fair. We must take a look at what this means for Chatham-Kent. For every job in primary agriculture and processing hort crops, we supply 2.6 jobs to this, for the good to this county. This sort of charge for the bunkhouse housing could discourage our farmers from investing in our county and go elsewhere, be it Lambton, Essex, Elgin, where they would see the growth come to their county and not ours. An old figure that I found in 1995 was for every farm worker represents $122,851 to the economy of Ontario. Now, believe this, the minimum wage at that time was $6.85. Today, the wage is $14 an hour, and can you imagine what that figure is today? Be over $250,000. I have all the methodology here of how those figures were arrived, because Dr. Bill Stevens did the first one, what's called a Quest for Reliable Workforce, and second was done in 2015 by Al Musselman from the George Morris Center. They've renamed it now, so I'm a little bit behind on the name. In finishing, the crop of cannabis that you just talked about, it could be such a valuable asset too, because for every 2 workers it would take to harvest like an acre of greenhouse tomatoes or cucumbers, medical cannabis takes 33 employees per acre. That is very labor intensified, but also brings one awful lot of money into what's going to be happening, because the fact, again, for the 2.6, like 10 acres would take 330 workers. So you can see how this is important. There's already almost 1,300 workers in Chatham-Kent, so we're the 4th in size in Ontario for the amount of workers that we bring in from other countries. And this also includes a lot of Canadians that are not in that figure. I think we've got to think about our county. We've got to think about our farmers. And there's something I used many years ago, and I can't leave my mind. And this is when we had to convince the federal government that we could bring workers in to do our work on our farms. A Mexican may pick a tomato in Mexico. A Mexican may pick a tomato in the U.S., but don't you think it's best if that Mexican picks a Canadian in Ontario and we all benefit from it? I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jordan Apers. On deck is Jeff and Robois.
This is to amend it, right? So this is to review the, okay, so I believe you're for the amendment then, and not against it?
I'm against the amendment, or against the motion.
So, yeah, he's pro-amendment. Just want to stress that one. My name is Jordan Apers. I'm from Walsburg, Ontario. I work on our farm part-time. We grow probably 13 different crops, whether it be vegetable or cash crop. We currently employ 12 Jamaicans that come visit us every year. We have 6 that are with us for about 8 months of the year, 7, 8 months of the year, and then the rest are here for cucumbers and peppers, usually around 9 weeks, 9, 10 weeks. As a young entrepreneur and hopefully one day to come to the farm full time, we've been looking at making some serious investments to see where we can grow and take on more of these crops and help bring more money not only to our family so that my brother and I can come home, but to the economy and help it grow. I know luckily we've got whites now coming in, which is great, hopefully bringing a few more acres. But I'm going to be honest, if it's going to cost me $1,800 per guy to build a bunkhouse, when I've only got a limited amount of dollars that I can invest in, building a bunkhouse isn't going to be in Chatham-Kent when I'm only 2 miles from Lambton County. They don't have the regulations, and if it's a matter of my guys driving 10 more minutes, I'm sorry, it's not worth $60,000 in fees when we look at 24 to 30 guys per year. And especially in an industry that's already so thin to begin with. I know hand cuke growers, there's only 23 right now, so it's something that's going away. And especially when kids want to come home to the farm, but since it's too expensive to do these specialty crops, it doesn't become feasible anymore. Now, once this goes away, I know we're Chatham-Kent and we grow for the world, and I love it, and I think it's great, and I think we need to promote it. But there's going to be a time where if we don't start checking these regulations and watching how I can't go to our processor and say, hey, we need more money. They don't care that minimum wage has gone up. This is the offer, and either we take it or it's gone. And we've been taking, they've been reviewing the program to bring in foreign workers, and no one around here wants to do it. And we can say, oh, well, it'll bring in jobs. It won't. We've tried. We've offered more money, and people just don't want to do it. So for me, building the bunkhouse is the only option, but the other option is I'm just going to grow corn, beans, and wheat and forget about it altogether. And I think that's the way a lot of people my age especially are starting to look at it. When I look at my dad working 16, 17 hours growing up all the time, where it used to be feasible, I'm not willing to do that for nothing anymore. If I can just grow corn, beans, and wheat and work off farm where I'm currently at, it doesn't make sense. And I know there's another young guy here who I'm pretty good buddies with, and we're both trying to do the same thing. But like I said, when it comes down to $60,000 and the bank's not going to give me money, it's just not going to happen. So I believe it was Melissa Harrigan that said it earlier, and this isn't anything. It's just, when you over-restrict something, it's either going to go somewhere else or it's just not going to happen altogether. And when you're wanting us to pay all these fees, and I get it, the PUC needs something out of it as well. I'm not taking that away from them, but there comes a point where we decide as a business whether it's a good investment or not, or if we're going to take our money elsewhere. Like I said, I love the community, but between all whether it's federal, provincial, and even municipal, I think it's a great thing. But at the same time, I think we're at a point where people are out of touch of how this business works, and it will be coming to an end. So we either need to get out ahead of it and say, hey, here's what we're going to do, and maybe make some investments or make it a little more feasible for us. But if it continues the way it is, and we're going to have to pay, like I said, this was around $1,600 per individual that we bring in, it's just not going to happen, or we're going to go somewhere else. And there's a lot of people, especially my age, and people like my dad's age, they've had enough of it, and we just can't do it anymore. So, like I said, I'm all for Chatham-Kent. I don't want that to be unclear, but at the end of the day, we can't work for nothing either. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I do appreciate it. And like I said, I hope you vote my way, but like I said, that's what it's coming down to here. So I just thank you for your time again, and I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jeff and Robois.
All right, that was very well said, Jordan. So thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I am Jeff Van Robois, and I am the owner of the Pickle Station in Chatham. And we've been growing and grading pickling cucumbers and processing banana peppers on our farm and on that location in Chatham-Kent for 56 years now. And we grow a lot ourselves, but we also contract out to a lot of different growers, 54 different growers that span from Mitchell's Bay to Rondo Bay and everywhere in between. So I'm up here tonight speaking on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of my growers as well. And I personally bring in 28 Jamaicans and 7 Mexicans in for our in-field harvesting every year, and I'm building a bunkhouse at the pickle station this year for my Jamaican crew. And we have been housing our guys in the city of Chatham for the last 5 years in approved and inspected houses in Chatham, and everything's been great. Up until the last couple of years, we've been running into problems, and the problems being neighbors, and we're starting to see some seedy individuals at night. And you know what? My guys are great. I love my guys. I got to get them out of town. I got to get them on farm. I got to build something on farm, a bunkhouse where there's going to be safer confines. So the other thing that's happening in our industry right now is we're getting a lot of pressure from the federal government, specifically Service Canada, where they want us to provide housing that is at a higher standard than the majority of Canadians live in. And I don't know how many councillors have had the opportunity to go see a bunkhouse in Chatham at Truly Green, for example. They're amazing. They are nicer than most houses. Granite countertops, there's beautiful kitchens, and there's rec rooms, and there's all kinds of stuff. And we're building one the same. And we have to. And I think I'm not alone. I think my other growers who are here in the room too are going to have to invest a lot of money in housing in the next few years. So that's coming down the pipeline. The reason I'm up here tonight is to talk about the approved changes to the PUC bunkhouse charges. And Judy, do you have that picture there that you can bring up for a minute? So I read the 164-page document that you guys got, and I watched the council meeting on February the 11th, and when it was approved. And really, I guess the reason I'm up here, I'm chalking this up to maybe an oversight or a typo. It had to be. So if I can bring your attention up here, and what I guess I'm looking at here, and this was page 5 or 6 in the document, that a single detached dwelling, a residential home, the PUC is putting a new charge in, a proposed charge here of $5,017 for a new house. And if we look at a different category, multiple dwelling is going to be $4,050. A long-term care facility, multiple bed facility that could have 50, 60, 70 beds, individual beds, is going to pay a one-time fee for PUC of $1,804. This bunkhouse, and I guess what I'm having a problem with, and maybe this is where the oversight is the bunkhouse is on a per bed charge. So what's being proposed here, what was agreed to, and I guess what we're looking to amend, is for my bunkhouse, is going to be a 28-person bunkhouse, at a similar bunkhouse on a site with water and sewer, is going to get charged 28 times 1,804. That's $50,500 in application fee. Not in water. I don't get a pipe. I don't get anything else. I get an application fee. This isn't even building permit. So really, that's, I guess, what I'm here talking about tonight. I understand also from the document, the PUC, they need some CapEx money coming down the pipeline. There's $200 million of CapEx that is in that same document. And we got to figure out how to get the money. I fully expect the leadership in the municipality to figure out ways to get that money creatively outside of fees. How do you sell, for example, water to a guy like me to use for my crops, for my irrigation? And I started working with the PUC 3 years ago on a pilot project to buy municipal water to irrigate my crop. And it's been going great. 4 years ago, I spent $0 in municipal water for my crops. In 2018, I spent between $50,000 to $60,000 in water. That's quite a boom, I think, to the coffers of the PUC. I also think we have to have a strategy around housing.
That's time, Mr. Villalobos.
Yeah, absolutely. So just on the last note here, we have a lot of good things going, guys. We got whites coming down. We have a bunch of new processors looking at Chatham-Kent. I need housing for my guys. My growers need housing for their guys, and let's not squash progress by this. All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next report that we have speakers on is item 17F, and it's the motion of Councillor Sakachi regarding the arena business plan. So I have 5 speakers on that. We'll start. The first is Nathan Trudell, Jim Pasovich, Bob Hamilton, Jackie Beatty, and Tom Bernard. So come forward, please, Nathan and Jim.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just want to address the situation in regards to our arenas and whatnot. I'm part of a group called Build the Complex Chatham-Kent. My name is Nathan Trudell. I'm one of the co-founders. And what we are doing is trying to promote the idea of building a full sports and entertainment center here in Chatham-Kent. Mr. Sakachi has brought up a lot of stuff about the arenas and the marketing plan and whatnot. We feel it's very important to pay attention to this subject also, because it's very important for our community moving forward. Saying that, we have 2 arenas in Chatham that have run their course. Obviously, Memorial Arena is almost 75 years old. Erickson Arena is almost 50 years old. Both of them, we just can't keep paying all that money to keep them running. It just makes sense to replace them. 75 years ago, we made an investment in Memorial Arena, and we got what we got out of it. Now it's time to make a new investment for the next 75 years. We've been talking lots from a lot of people who've been paying attention about a complex that seats about 4,200 to 5,000 people. We feel a complex in this area would benefit us drastically on a lot of fronts. We're having problems bringing businesses here. We're having problems keeping our youth here, and we're having problems bringing new families to our community. Our group feels that making a step like this will eliminate all 3 of those problems all at once. We submitted a whole bunch of paperwork to everybody on Friday, so I hope everybody got a chance to read it. It explained a lot about what we wanted to do and what we feel is best for our community, but it also made a strong point that we wanted to work together with everyone here. We feel that our group, working with council, can get somewhere much, much quicker, because we are under some time restraints if we want to do this right and if we don't want to pay for all this ourselves. We've found, talking to the public, that the biggest hesitation on any of this is everybody keeps saying, we don't want our taxes affected. We don't want to pay for this. We know firsthand there's ways to do this without forcing any tax impact on our taxpayers. And because of this, we know time restraint is the #1 factor that could prevent that from happening. So, again, we wanted to reiterate about the funding that's available. The government has released information about it being available, just like we had said. We knew it was going to come, and it came. We have the land if we want to use it. We have a giant 86-acre property in the Navistar land that we know firsthand is available. We can use that land. We need to take advantage of it. But people need to understand that a complex can't just be a complex. It's about developments you put around it. It's about the new tax assessments that come along with it. It's about creating a new community within a community. We have the space to do it. It just makes sense to do it. We have a developer that's willing to take on all the responsibility with that land. If there is a problem, if it has to be mediated, we need to do our part and work with that developer, because he's just as important as everybody else is when it comes to this subject. In the pamphlet that I submitted, we mentioned the creation of a working group to be put together. We asked council to move forward with this process so that we can work together to move quickly and take advantage of everything that we can, every opportunity that is present at this time. Just want everybody to remember, this has been a subject that's been talked about for a long time, and nothing's happened. But you know what? We're in the right position at this time to make a difference. Everybody in this room can do something that's never been done before here. We can all be a part of something at the grandest stage that's never been done here. I'm asking for your support. I hope you guys will consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Pasovich, and on deck is Bob Hamilton.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm just basically going to add on to what Nathan has been talking about, and I'm going to reiterate basically what we had discussed in the front lobby here a couple of weeks ago. I think the important thing for us to remember as citizens, we've got a stable group of long-term citizens that have lived here. They're invested in our community. We're talking about farmers, business owners, families passing their businesses down, and then you've got another group where one gentleman might own a small business, dry cleaner. One child is going to take that over, and the rest are going to go off to school, and they're going to get a great education. And the option for those types of children to move back here is probably going to be unavailable because we don't have a vibrant business. We're just not attracting that. I think the important thing to understand is we all travel out of town. And the average family probably I've spent $3,000 this year. Nathan's got 3 kids. We've been out. I think he's probably spent $5,000 or $6,000 so far this year. We multiply that across the board. We got 30,000 married couples in this community. We got another 10,000 single parents. You add up the children associated with that, we're talking about 80,000 people that are leaving this county all the time in revenue. And then the only way that we're going to be able to get people to come back here is if we've got the facilities. There's no big company that's going to move into this town that is going to bring their wife and children. She's going to ask, what are we going to do? Now, the Navistar grounds is an excellent opportunity, provided you can get remediated, and God knows we don't want to have the liability. But we've got a developer that has worked with Navistar remediating their properties in the United States and Canada for years and is willing to take the liability office. How are we going to do it? We can finance it. We can, with the grants that we apply for, we're talking about $50 million, maybe more, maybe another 20, 25 million by us. That alone has zero impact on our tax base because 25 million, we're done in 2023 or 2024 at 2.4 million a year paying for Riverview. It's only going to take about $100,000, maybe $105,000 a month to finance it, which is far less than what we finance Riverview for. There's no extra money that's going to be required. In fact, we're going to be saving by paying off Riverview, and we transfer that over into a facility. That's going to be a sports and entertainment complex. We're going to have the whole back third to do what we want. We've got it in the reserves to move the whole transportation hub to the one side. I've moved out of this town once, and then I moved back. I bought restaurants. I've helped the wastewater treatment plants with micronutrients, bringing products in with people and relationships that I've built. But a lot of people just aren't moving back because we don't have the industry. Thank God for the Herbal Enlightening, having the marijuana here. That's going to bring in a lot of new types of jobs and skill sets. But those people are going to find those same skill sets in other places like Niagara-on-the-Lake, where it's closer to all the things that they need to raise their families and all the amenities associated with that. If we start taking a look at getting into a 2,300 size arena, all we're doing is the same thing we're doing right now for another 75 years. We're limiting ourselves on what the potential is for that facility. If we keep calling it a twin pad arena, we're going to keep talking about the expense and debts of running an arena. If it's a sports and entertainment complex, we bring a lot more events. There's 500 events that run through this area every single year. 2/3 of those we can't even touch because we don't have the facilities. All the facilities, we just did unless I'm wrong, about $400,000 or $500,000 increase in our event spending. Well, where we're going to put all those events? Like the Navistar grounds represent a perfect location. Navistar is willing and able to move with us. Nathan and I were sitting down hammering all this over. Sure, we've talked to Randy a considerable amount because he's got a lot of expertise over the last 10 or 12 years and everything that's going on. I've spoken to Michael, spoken to Amy, I've spoken to a few of the councilors, haven't had the opportunity to speak with you all. But at the end of the day, both of us are more than happy to. We want to work with you. We're bringing this to you. I don't know how many are aware of the full scenario, the full possibility and potential of all this happening, but we're just bringing it to you saying, this is why I moved home. I moved home because my mom had Alzheimer's. I wouldn't have came back. I called up Randy because he was the mayor at the time with the councilors that were in place. I see where we're going. And that's why I moved home. I could have put my mom in a nursing home, stayed in Toronto. No, I moved back home. And I've tried to make this a vibrant community and participate and try and help it grow. But council's got to do its part now, and we have to at least move something forward, start researching and working and figure out the viability. Nathan and I are willing to work with you on this. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Bob Hamilton. On deck is Jackie Beatty.
Your Worship, Mayor and Council, my name is Bob Hamilton. I live at 244 Chestnut Street, Bothell, Ontario. And I'm the Vice Chair of the Bothell Community Boosters and the Chairperson of BARAC, our recreation end of the Community Boosters. And we appreciate this opportunity to speak with you tonight. We may be a little panic-stricken based on some surveys that were put out, maybe not by Chatham-Kent, but by some local news organizations, went all through social media and stuff, where it showed, but the majority of the people in Chatham-Kent that at least answered the survey would like to see Bothell Arena, because of its usage, be one of the ones that may be sacrificed to make room for a new sports complex. And I want to just say, we're in favor of Chatham doing something aggressive in a nice new sports complex. We'll support it. We're not against it. We don't want to fall away because of it. That's our problem. And so we're just being a little proactive here. We're going to give you some information tonight. You're also deliberating, I think, on arena prices, so we want to be a little proactive and give you some information, help you make those decisions. So, first of all, the survey, I think it was put out by CK Express. I find that out today. So, but anyhow, it was a bit divisive in nature at Pitt area against area, and I think if Chatham-Kent wants to be a viable community, that can never happen. You can never let one end of Chatham-Kent fall to save another. So when they pose the question, who should close? Well, nobody's going to say, pick me. They're going to take the lowest sheet, the one with the least population, where we couldn't respond in numbers, and so we showed up very bad. Anyhow, so you guys have been elected as representatives in your constituencies, and now you're making decisions that will affect every person in Chatham-Kent, regardless of address. So you are the people that's going to make the ultimate decision of what happens with arenas here, and so we want to give you some, especially on pricing, which affects us more because we're an outlying neighbor community with neighbors that charge a lot less than we do for ice and stuff of that nature. So we want to just give you some stuff to mull over. When Mayor Caniff met with us in his community meetings around around Chatham-Kent, he called us passionate. Well, I'll tell you why we're passionate. Some of us have been associated with our arena and the programs within that arena since it was built in 1971. Our hockey organizations have had enormous success. Several Ontario championships, multiple finalists, many tournament victories, and produced a host of players that went on to junior, college, and the pro ranks. Our adult leagues and our figure skating are some of the longest running in the area. However, the thing that we're most proud of is not the trophies nor the banners, but it's the type of individuals our program have produced. Many boys and girls have made their way out into the community, armed with skills that make them a valid commodity to this community. They have learned the benefits of teamwork, interacting with others, respective authorities of coaches, league officials, and referees, the importance of a planned structure, and how to execute it for success. Some have gone on to other sports teams and organizations throughout this municipality, and are passing those values on every day. Some are using those values in different fields like teaching, policing, and medical field, and a host of other jobs. Many have started their own businesses within the municipality. For those reasons alone, these facilities should not only be retained, but we have to look at ways to get more people and more usage into them. If Chatham-Kent wants to be a community where people stay and one that attracts new people and business, it's important that every part of Chatham-Kent is kept viable. I suggest to you that even if arenas are not totally self-sustaining, a raise in the mill rate is not wasted money when it comes to arenas and things of that nature that produce people like I just talked about. Keep in mind that most of us don't have, in the outlying areas, YMCAs, larger water parks, theaters, cinemas, fitness centers, sportplex, pools, halls, mini golf, or access to gymnasiums. In Bothell, we have our arena. We have two nice ball diamonds. Only one's being used. It's being used by Tyke T-Ball with the sponsorship of our local Optimist Club. We used to have a softball league, several slow pitch teams, slow pitch tournaments. They've all migrated out of the municipality to Florence, Newberry, and Glencoe due to user rates.
That's time, Mr. Hamilton.
Okay, CK is losing out a considerable economic spin-off because of that. Don't repeat that mistake with arenas. You're gonna learn some more from a couple more members of my committee, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Jackie Beatty. On deck is Tom Bernard.
Good evening, Your Worship and esteemed council. I'm Jackie Beatty, Chair of Bothwell Community Boosters and a member of BRAC. I live in Bothwell. Bothwell Area Recreation Advisory Committee is a volunteer group that was formed 3 years ago in response to a budget recommendation that the Bothwell Arena be considered for closure. As a community, we decided that we needed to show our support and the passion that Bob has mentioned in a concrete manner. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're here to let you know what we've been up to. Over the past few years, we have felt frustrated at the steady decline in arena usage and knew that it was more than demographics that are leading this change. For 20 years, the only solution offered by the municipality has been reduced hours or closure. As you know, often service reductions become a self-fulfilling prophecy that reduces viability and inevitably leads to closure. We knew there was still tremendous potential in our building, and the best opportunity for growth would come from alternative usage. Like most Chatham-Kent arenas, ours sat dormant throughout the spring and summer. The recent arena report labeled Bothwell as the least used for ice rentals, but it is one of the most used from April until September. In your agenda package is an event report from last year's program, and this year we are adding even more. Beginning April 1st, we will offer pickleball, ball hockey, lacrosse, soccer, an exercise room, horseshoes, Canada Day festivities, flea markets, and the very unique and very popular roller skating nights, family roller skating nights. Due to the success of our program, this season we are also adding additional hours, and we will be offering various fitness classes. We have shown that these events are well attended, but they're also well supported and sustainable. Through strong community support and a partnership with Riverview Gaming Center, we have come up with a model that we feel can be executed at any CK arena. And we thank the municipality for supporting us in this endeavor. Staff has been very accommodating to our requests. Oops, sorry, wrong page. Another goal for this year is to secure funding for an outdoor digital sign that will be available for all community events. One of the main barriers we have found to success is that there is lack of promotion of our facilities. So we hope that signage will help with this problem. Events such as public skating are not promoted at our location itself. They may be online, but in the arena you can't find a sign that tells you when anything is going on. In fact, we feel that there is no incentive for staff to promote or solicit arena usage at all. This is a problem. A theater manager is expected to find and facilitate business. Why is this not incumbent upon arena management? I believe that we have shown Bothwell's dedication to our arena, but I wonder if you understand why we are so passionate about it. Bothwell is lumped in as one of 10 arenas, and in your estimation is an underperformer. But to our community, the Bothwell Arena fills a great need. It is our sole recreational facility and as such is a key component of community viability. Much like a library, an arena is not expected to make a profit, but to generate value to quality of life in the local economy. Bothwell lies off the beaten path, so we must rely on attractions to draw people in. Bothwell Arena has always been a strong economic driver. When people are here, they visit restaurants and local shops. They may stop at Bothwell Fine Furniture or one of our garden centers. When parents take their children to practice, they often run errands to the grocery store or variety store, and these will be lost to another center if our arena should close. Groups who use the arena also directly affect the economy by providing jobs, especially to the youth of the area. Last winter, user groups spent a total of $26,000 in local wages to gate and timekeepers, instructors, and referees. This is in addition to what was paid to CK Arena staff to run the facility and concessions. Barack itself employs several student helpers for our programs, and this summer we will budget $8,000 to local wages and an additional $6,500 in local purchasing, and that doesn't even count our thousands of volunteer hours. But it goes further than that. The economy is also greatly affected by the quality of life that a recreational facility provides. As our only sport facility, it is a main cog in our economic wheel. With both our arena and school under scrutiny, it is difficult to attract young families to the area. We need to promote a vibrant and thriving community, and without the arena, we would lose an important part of our social structure. The social, economic, and health benefits far outweigh the small deficit that it costs, a deficit that we believe can be eliminated with better programming and promotion. Throughout my presentation, I've been referring to the Bothwell Arena, but its full name is Bothwell Area Sports Center. It was never intended, I have one sentence. It was never intended to be just a nice facility. It is a social and recreational hub, a true community center. It is BRAC's goal to return it to this use, but we need your support to do so. Thank you, and please like us on Facebook.
Last speaker on this topic is Tom Venerd.
Mayor Caniff and councilors, I'm Tom Venhard, and I'm also a member of BARAC, and I live in Bothwell. And I guess I'm here because my dad always told me, if you're going to complain, you better offer solutions. We, the BARAC committee, believe the fundamental business plan for the Bothwell Arena is flawed in a number of ways. First and foremost, we believe that one price fits all does not work. I'm sure all of us wish we could sell our homes in Chatham-Kent for what they get for them in Toronto, but that's unrealistic. It's also not realistic to have a flat rental rate for a facility in Chatham compared to a similar facility in Bothwell. This is especially true if the price point becomes unmanageable. Right now, the hourly prime rate for Chatham-Kent is $200 per hour. As a comparison, Glencoe's prime rate is $160 per hour. West Lawrence is $144 per hour. And Alvinston, which is our closest arena, 15 minutes down the road and is thriving, has an hourly rate of $116 per hour. These numbers become even more grotesque if you compare non-prime rates. Glencoe, Alvinston, and West Lorne have rates of $75, $76, and $58 per hour respectively, compared to Chatham-Kent's rate of $160 per hour. That is more than double the cost for arenas that are within 20 minutes of us. And if these were gas prices, I'm sure each and every one of us would drive the distance to keep this kind of savings. We understand there are major costs associated with operating an arena, namely the energy costs of the compressors and staffing. But these costs are there even if the arena is empty. Does it not make sense then to make every effort possible to put people in these buildings? Likewise, the same principle applies when the summer rates are in effect, when the energy costs are substantially reduced and an opportunity for greater profit is presented. Sports teams and service clubs are always looking for ways to raise money for their causes, and this has economic spin-off for the community, even if only temporary. The same economic spin-off occurs for private functions as well, stag and does or weddings, etc. Unfortunately, the same problem still exists in the summer as in the winter. The present rates do not lend themselves to making enough profit to make many worthwhile causes feasible. I know firsthand as a member of the Dresden Junior Kings, we just took over and hosted a men's hockey tournament. And I know that our committee has already decided that the amount of money that we made wasn't worth the amount of hours that we put in. And so we're not going to run that tournament next year. And the cause is the high rates. We feel that if these rates, both summer and winter, were lowered or a two-tiered system implemented, this would facilitate greater usage. Providing local service in a building that is sitting idle, especially in the summer, might not seem like may seem like a small amount of money, but it becomes significant if it occurs repeatedly across Chatham-Kent. Secondly, we feel there are problems with the way the services are provided. Currently, there's no manager allocated to the Bothell Arena, and the arena staff is not allowed to handle money. Other arenas with managers on location are better able to manage their dead ice. They use dead ice for events such as senior skate or stick and puck, where people come in and use the ice during the day. They see the value of having that ice being used. We once had similar things in Bothell. Shift workers from Marcus Trucking would come in and play shinny on Tuesday afternoons. Students would go in when they weren't at school and know that they could pay per person depending on how many lights they wanted turned on in the arena. Today, a person has to book ice online, pay a set rate in advance, and hope they have enough people to cover the exorbitant cost. And so obviously the ice in Bothell goes unused. In other arenas like West Lorne and Alvinston, for example, they still offer that old system, and very little dead ice is unused. Last but not least, we feel the life cycle budget for the physical facility of the arena can be implemented more efficiently. For example, Tuflix flooring was installed in 1981 and replaced 36 years later in 2017. The newest dressing rooms were added in 2011, and the flooring was replaced in 2018, 7 years later, not because they were worn or unsafe, but because the color made them difficult to keep clean. Similarly, we have an expensive arena truck assigned to our building that is equipped with a full set of tools that are duplicated within the building. This truck is mainly used for picking up supplies and sits idle 90% of the time. Why can't a system be implemented where multiple arenas share a single truck? In conclusion,
Time.
oh, it's so good, Judy. In conclusion, what we hope, Honorable Mayor and Councilors, is that we see how valuable the Bothell Arena is to us, not only our community, but all of Chatham-Kent. What needs to happen is simply a changing of our way of thinking. We need to embrace the arena as an asset rather than a liability, see the opportunity it presents rather than the 0.0002% of the budget it represents. And all we have to do is change our way of thinking, and we've shown that by our committee, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Last speaker is Steve Pickard on item 20C, Integrity Commissioner Investigation Interim Report.
Honorable Mayor, council members, thank you for hearing me and not voting me off the island. It's great. I'm talking to you about the report that's brought forward in 20C, which claims that there's been a serious breach in some protocol. I'm not aware of any protocol that applies to me or Mr. Robertson that Mr. Watson is claiming in his report. Obviously, the protocol in your code of conduct and the municipal act applies to the integrity commissioner, and it sets out what he is obliged to do, but it doesn't set out anything that the respondent is obliged to do. There's a couple important facts that I think need to be clarified in that report, seeing as it's taken the time to make it public. In particular, that On November 2nd, November 26th, January 30th, and February 1st, I inquired of Mr. Watson when and if he was going to interview Mr. Robertson. I didn't get a single response from him. And finally, a week after that February 1st email, I went to Mr. Norton and with Mr. Robertson said, why has he released a report without interviewing Mr. Robertson? Does it sound right to you? And I don't know what happened between that Friday and the Tuesday, but then I received an email from Mr. Watson changing his mind that he might want to interview Mr. Robertson. So if you call that begging, which is Mr. Watson's claim that Mr. Robertson falsely claimed that he begged for an interview, I'd consider that close to begging, but maybe not. On page 2, Mr. Watson's report claims that he had given the entire complaint and the backup materials to me on behalf of Mr. Robertson. That's completely untrue. There was a backup report, which is the lessons learned report, was in the possession of Mr. Watson at the time, and he refused to give it. He never gave that to us. But the other complaint that he makes in his report is that he gave me this report on an interim basis confidentially. And I have the cover letter. I think I've given it to council already, but that cover letter makes it clear there's no confidential. And he never requested any confidentiality. And in fact, he has never put confidential in any communication with me. But it is important that the Integrity Commissioner maintain confidentiality. It's in the Integrity Act, and it's his duty to keep things secret. And he did not do that in this particular case. And in fact, one of the main reasons I'm here is because in his report, he actually reveals 2 things he was supposed to keep secret and things we wouldn't have known until today. And one is that Mr. Hope is actually the complainant in the report against Mr. Robertson. And that wasn't known by anybody until we read this report, because in his report he says that Mr. Robertson and Mr. Pickard made a complaint against the complainant, being Mr. Hope, since I know who those complaints were made against. But he also put my name, that I was a complainant. And that's a very serious breach. When I made my complaint against Mr. Hope, I ticked off that it was confidential, and that was Mr. Watson's obligation to keep that secret, and he didn't. He published it in a report and put it out publicly. The breach by Mr. Watson simply shows that he doesn't have a grasp of the confidentiality rules that surround his role. It is not Mr. Watson's right to confidentiality. It was Mr. Robertson's right. It was my right. It was Mr. Hope's right to confidentiality. And Mr. Watson breached that confidentiality, and he frankly let us all down. When I had met with Mr. Watson on the 26th, the issue that I had raised with him regarding process that he had told me that he was going to follow was very, very concerning. He said that he wasn't going to worry about malice or the intention of why people make certain complaints, that he would simply investigate them. And I asked him point blank, I said, listen, if I came to you and said, oh, I think Councillor so-and-so did something wrong, and I don't have any facts or details, but I want you to investigate it, would you do that? He said, yeah, I'd investigate that. And to me, that's very serious, dangerous, and it's weaponizing the role. And you as councillor should be concerned that there's no basis for a complaint that he won't investigate. You can be the subject of investigation and have things become public, inquiries, questions of your character brought out in public. But I want to leave you with a final thought that comes from Mr. Watson's preliminary report, and it's that if anyone around this table has any concerns about the Integrity Commissioner's breaches in this particular case, the breach, me, Mr. Hope, I see I'm time, I'll finish my sentence if okay, and Mr. Robertson. But according to Mr. Watson's report on January 28th, he says that it will be wrong of you to go to Mr. Shropshire and say, is this right? It will be wrong of you to go to Mr. Norton. It'll be wrong of you to try to resolve it internally before you take it to the ultimate issue before council. And it'll be wrong of you to let anybody know that you want to go to council with an issue. It's your role to appoint the Integrity Commissioner. It's your role to appoint the CBO. They are your appointees, and you must have the ability to review your appointments and expect of those people to do their job. And in this particular case, I suggest the IC has let you down, and his report hasn't been completely forthcoming in some of the facts. Thank you.
Item 13, consent agenda. Yes, Councillor Harrigan?
First, I need to motion to move the consent agenda,
Yes.
correct? Thank you, I'll make that motion.
Councillor Kirkwood-White?
I'll second that motion.
Any items to pull out? Councillor Harrigan?
Item A2, Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund.
Councillor Thompson?
I had the same one.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of accepting the other items of the consent agenda? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Harrigan?
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for this report. I think it's really exciting that we could get some senior government funding to help us with the ongoing engineering and infrastructure needs that we have. I have two questions, recognizing in the report that it's called out that if we do get funding, there'll be more discussions on finances, so they're really high-level questions at this point. But there's mention that the 2019 capital projects were identified and funded at 60% with the hope that our application would be successful. So I think I know the answer to this, but what will happen to those capital projects if we do not get the funding for them this year?
Thank you, Mayor. So they would only be partially funded. Therefore, in 2019, if there is enough funding, it may be logical to proceed with the engineering work. Both of those projects were the Riverview Line slope stabilization. So we may proceed with some engineering, but obviously we don't have enough to complete the project. So it would be moved to 2020 to actually do the implementation of the project.
Okay, thank you. So they'd be delayed. And then the second question I have is more for future years. When we receive senior level funding like this through grants and it goes into engineering, does it increase our engineering total budget, or does it just increase the revenues that are in engineering?
Thank you, Mayor. So essentially, we will be able to fund projects. We only need to fund them 60%, and the government will fund them 40%. So that 40% is new revenue for us that would not be included in our budget, and it would allow us to complete those projects sooner at less cost.
So I guess another way to phrase my question is, will our infrastructure and engineering budget be X plus what we get from the federal government if we're successful? Or it's X and some of that's paid by local tax members locally, and then some of that is put into, we've assumed that those revenues come in. Like, does it grow our bottom investment into engineering and infrastructure is the question.
It would be the first case, it'd be the X plus.
Okay, thank you. It's very exciting. I'm crossing my fingers on this one.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much. I echo a lot of Councillor Harrigan's comments. I guess the one specific question I had was going through the list here on what we've included. I was just curious as to why potentially one of our largest projects, which could be the Erie Shore Drive, wasn't included in the application.
Could you clarify exactly what work you're specifying at Erie Shore Drive?
Well, when I look here and I see stuff like slope stabilization along rivers and whatnot, I'm just referencing the slope stabilization on Erie Shore Drive that could potentially involve municipal drainage works.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, on Erie Shore Drive, we conducted an engineering evaluation of the road itself, and it was found to be stable. We were fine with the condition of the road. The second case is that we also, through council's approval, went forward with NRCan and a complete engineering study, a coastal study of all of Lake Erie and the erosion effects. And that presentation was given to council in January. So we are waiting for the completion of that study. We're going to have some heavy public engagement. The first meeting will be on April 10th at the Aerial Fire Hall, and the complete report will be done March of next year. So with all of these projects, you had to present, here's exactly what we're going to do, and here's the cost. We don't have that solution at this time until all of that study is completed, not just on Erie Shore Drive, but across all of Lake Erie, including Rose Beach Line, including the bluffs as well to the west.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Harrigan?
I'll make a motion then to accept the item in the consent agenda.
Councillor Thompson?
What?
You want to second the?
Yeah, I will totally
accept-
second that, yes. Sorry, I faded away here.
Just
speaking
testing you there.
To Councillor McGrail. My apologies. Yes,
All in favor?
absolutely.
Opposed? Carried. Item 15, tender awards and requests for proposals. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I skipped one there. Item 14, notice of motion. Councillor Kirkwood-White, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm gonna see where this goes. It's regarding the establishment of an advisory committee of council regarding recreational facilities. Whereas it is, and actually it's in light of your recent video on the various options concerning the recreation complex. So the motion reads as follows: whereas it is timely in view of recent public interest in recreational facilities that council approve the establishment of an advisory committee of council to explore the various options together with pros and cons to be considered in enhancing Chatham-Kent recreational facilities, such advisory committee to have specific terms of reference to inform its work, and further that an interim report be submitted to council no later than May 27th.
Any others? Not. Number 15, tender awards and requests for proposals.
Item 15A, single source employee recruitment and applicant tracking system.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendations. Number one, the request for proposal, RFP, for the employee recruitment and applicant tracking system from CGI Group, Inc., at a total value of $174,585, including HST, over 3 years, be accepted. And two, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement associated with the purchase, subject to approval of the terms of the agreement by the chief legal officer. I so move.
Councillor Finn.
I'll second that motion.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 15B, sole source of two-way radio equipment and related services.
Councillor Harrigan.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Crew.
Second.
Any questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I had some questions on this replacement of the radios. Is this all the radios in all the trucks, the handhelds for the fire department, the police?
Through your worship, this report brings forward a recommendation to replace all the radio equipment that won't be compatible with the new infrastructure. So if I was to take someone quickly back in time to, we all had analog cell phones at one point. The carriers got to a point where they had to change over their networks and we all had to buy a new phone. That's the scenario that the municipality's in. So Thames Communications provides the network. That's the backbone of communications for police and fire. That network has run end of life. It's been in service since amalgamation in 1998. It now needs to be replaced. For our equipment to be able to talk on the new network, we need to change over the hardware. So this plan actually brings forward, it's not a replacement of all equipment. There's about $1.9 million worth of assets that we can stretch out additional life out of by following this plan that Thames brought forward to us.
Through you, the mayor. Now, is this a digital, like is it through the cell towers or what's happening here? Whoops.
No, this is still a two-way radio system. So to facilitate critical communications for both police and fire, we still need a system that's very efficient that allows one person like a dispatcher to talk to multiple units in the field. That technology today doesn't exist in the cellular world. there is some stuff coming down the pipe in the next 10 years. There'll be some changes that may open up new opportunities, but today we still need to be in a two-way radio network.
Has this been tested like out along the lake in Clearville Park? Because there's problems out there now.
So there is a couple spots that are challenged based on the topography of the municipality. So what this is on the provider side of Thames, this is them updating their existing equipment. That's end of life to new equipment. The actual coverage patterns will be relatively the same. Going from analog to digital, there's a perception of an increased level of coverage because the digital signals take care of the typical background noise that you would hear.
So are you still going to have to hold a fire truck back with a repeater in it on a hill so they can get through, or?
Yeah, so you are correct. So the municipality is a very large municipality, and that in itself presents a number of challenges to doing two-way radio communications. So way back at the start of amalgamation, a decision was made to deploy a model that's based on vehicle-based repeaters instead of fixed repeaters. So that, given the size of the municipality and the frequency of calls and activity out in the rural areas, that's the most economical way to deliver two-way radio service.
Councillor Pinsino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Yeah, this system is long overdue. It does need to be replaced. With the technology out there, though, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that we're still using so much of the old technology when, 20 years, this stuff's all 20 years old, probably plus. And with the new technology, I don't know why we would spend 1.7 million and not be farther along in the process of upgrading to better technology.
So this is really about a transition plan to move to digital technology. So if we were to do what was typically termed in the industry a forklift upgrade, we'd be looking at an initial investment of between $4 to $10 million, depending on whether you want to use vehicle-based repeaters or you wanted to go to a system that a firefighter, police officer could talk from the portable radio back to dispatch anywhere in Chatham-Kent. So this is really about stretching out a little bit more equity, or our return on investment of our vehicular repeaters is the big chunk of money that's going to be stretched out a little bit longer. They've proven to be very stable, very reliable. If we were to just do a complete change, the challenge is that you're going to need to come up with all that money up front. This just allows the municipality to kind of transition along. And the other part to keep in mind, as I spoke earlier, is within the next 10 years, there's a lot of stuff emerging that may change the fact that two-way radio may open up new doors with stuff that's referred to as software-defined radio. So, I don't think we want to be the municipality that buys the best, Sony Beta machine, just as, they're not becoming fashionable anymore.
Yeah. So basically, Thames, they own all the existing towers. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Thames is the owner-operator, so they own the towers, they own the radio frequencies, they own all the infrastructure equipment. We, as a municipality, just own the end-user gear, so it's much like the same relationship you have with your cellular carrier.
I know right now the handhelds they're in serious need of upgrade. So basically, that's what's getting upgraded. You're going to leave the radios in the fire trucks as well as the ones in the police car cruisers.
So what is going to stay is mobile radios that are capable of being reloaded with software to talk on the new digital network, and then what's going to leave is the non-compatible mobiles and some of the older portable radios and some of the base stations. So there's about $1.9 million worth of hardware that we can kind of upgrade and continue to use on the new network for a number of years going forward.
Okay, so this is somewhat of a Band-Aid fix. How many years do you see this being making the system viable?
So right now, Thames is kind of telling us 6 to 10 years is kind of where they're looking that we could continue to stretch out the use of our existing vehicular repeaters. And again, as you noted, this is really part of a path to renewing the whole critical infrastructure. But right now, this is just a step forward. And like I said, when we get 5 years out, there could be emerging technologies that that could take us to cellular LTE stuff. There is those talks going on in the U.S. right now called FirstNet. Other ways for public safety organizations to communicate efficiently. But right now, those price points are way up in the military price points and not in the price point that we'd want to entertain.
I guess the beauty of technology is the prices do keep coming down. Just one more to follow up on Councillor Wright. The repeaters, I know the volunteer stations, they have one truck with a repeater, and sometimes that becomes a problem if that truck doesn't go. Was there any thought ever to putting in a repeater in each of the fire units? Are they that cost prohibitive, or?
So in-vehicle repeaters about $15,000 a piece.
Okay.
So initially amalgamation, all frontline pumpers, the first unit to scene, were installed with vehicular repeaters to make sure that there was a repeater on the fire ground or on in the area where firefighters and police officers would work. Same with the police car. Over the years after that point, additional vehicular repeaters were put into the stations. So most of the volunteer stations have a repeater in their pumper and usually in their rescue support vehicle. And then obviously in the Chatham as well,
I guess that was my point, because now there's a lot more medical assist than there ever was. So you do need a repeater in the rescue unit because the pumper doesn't go to those. So anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, let's put the vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Item 15C, results of request for proposal R19-168, consolidation, review, and update of the Chatham-Kent 10-year housing and homelessness plan.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I'll move the recommendation, Your Honor.
Councillor C. McGregor.
I'll second that motion.
Any questions? Bless you. Seeing none, put the vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
For 16, Public Utilities Commission.
Item 16A, motion by Councillor Carmen McGregor regarding development charges bylaw.
Thank you, Council. Because this was voted on by Council previously at an earlier Council meeting this year, it requires a 2/3 vote to put it on the floor. So the first vote that you'll be voting on right now is 2/3 to put it back on the floor. If that's obtained, then we'll pass the floor over to Councillor McGregor.
You want to put the motion forward? Oh,
You have
sorry.
to do a 2/3 vote first.
Oh, yes.
before we can
Sorry.
vote on
Okay.
this. Yes.
It's electronic vote.
The motion to reconsider passes 17-0.
Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, and my voice is kind of cutting out here, so I apologize. I think you'll see the motion that's coming back up before you, and my motion at this point is to refer this.
Sorry, can we just get, we'll need a second first, then you can speak in there. I know we're going to have lots of them, but Councillor Pinsino. You second it? Okay. Okay, questions, Councillor
Okay, so you
C.
see
McGregor.
the motion up there is regarding the development charge, and it's to refer the development charge. It's actually bylaw 18-219 and 19-219 back to the PUC to amend the water and wastewater development charge, and as it refers to bunkhouse charges. And I'm asking that it go back and have the fees amended to reduce it to a 25% of the recently approved charges.
Any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Harrigan.
So for clarity, reducing 25% of the approved fees, but still leaving in the per bed.
Yes, actually, the cost that's in the bylaws right now, in the development charges, are the actual fixed costs of what it costs the PUC to install the service, as it was put to me. And, but, so I would like that to stay there, so, but it be recognized that they only be paying 25% of the actual cost of installment, or the before and after charge, yeah. So, I'm sorry, I'm slipping out here, and faster I talk, the worse it's getting here. So the idea of this would be to reduce that back down to 25% of the newer fee. It is still an increased rate over the original per bunk fee, but it is, of course, much lower at 25%. I think this recognizes, it's supposed to be coming down to me. This recognizes the fact that, thank you. The 25% still recognizes the fact that there are costs involved to do this, but I think we need to get it back down into a more reasonable area and grant this. We do grant other areas within industrial and such, waiving different development charge fees, and I think that we need to make this and put this back down into a affordable by not only the large growers, but also by the smaller basic farms that we heard tonight. I think that the original charge put in there just makes it cost prohibitive for them to do this, and I want to do whatever we can to support our number one economic grower within our community.
So then, just to make sure that I'm clear in my head that we're going far enough to do that support, would there be a staff member who can answer for me, like a 10-bed bunkhouse, what the cost would be based on this?
Based on this, I think.
No, I picked 10 because that's the easiest with math, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at 25%, currently right now for water, DCs, it's $998 for water, and wastewater is $806. 25%, that leaves us at $249.50. And for wastewater, it's $201.50. So that's where the rate would go at 25%.
So if it per bed, so like 40, can we go from $450 to like $4,500?
Pardon me?
Like on the per bed with the bunkhouse, in theory, like yeah.
That's a per bed charge.
Okay, yeah.
Councillor Foss?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think my question was answered. I wondered what that cost would be, and I guess it's $450 per bed. I guess, was this figure discussed with the community that is going to be assessed that, whether they're comfortable with that, or are they still looking for a better deal than that, I guess?
The only thing I can suggest is that I have talked to a couple of people and expressed to them what I'd planned to do, and they're much happier with that rate than they are at the original rate. I'm sure they would prefer it be totally waived, but I was trying to put something in to have a bit of a middle ground so that the PUC could at least recoup some of those costs of that cost for them putting in the lines for the water and wastewater.
Councillor Pincinel?
Just a sec, Your Worship, sorry. I guess there was never a charge for this before. Is that correct? This was a new charge total, is that right, Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there was a charge before. 2018's rate was $121 for water, $121.45 for water, and $159.11 for wastewater, with a total of $280.56.
Okay, so basically it's going up $150 roughly, I guess, thereabouts, or less, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pincinel?
Thank you, Worship. I spoke to several greenhouse owners over the last little bit here, and they're okay with a bit of an increase. They don't, they just want it to be reasonable, and they've seen this as being over the top, and I guess in reality it is. But, they understand the need for the PUC to, stay viable and at least, regroup some of their costs, but it has to be within reason. And honestly, I think this motion here covers all that. Sure, some of them, I'm sure, would like it to be less, but I think this is a number that both sides can live with.
Councilor McGrail?
So thank you, Mayor Caniff, sorry. I just want to reiterate that sometimes we talk about the greenhouses, and then sometimes we're talking about the individual farmers out there that are trying to, bring unique crops and economic adventures into our municipality. So going from 280 around there, right, that we were at, to that 450, I think is a significant jump still, that I would like to see maybe something a little bit less of a jump for them, because we're not talking about, individuals that make, like, it's a slim margin there, right, between growing a crop and selling your crop, and then going, between that third party and everyone getting their piece of that pie, right? And to be able to really grow and come back to the farm, right? That's what this is all about, somewhat. So I'm not sure how to proceed with this, but I think that 450 is just another little too big of a jump there.
Councillor C. McGray, would you consider that as a friendly amendment?
Well, I don't think she expressed a percentage, but my suggestion would be, because it is going back to the PUC for development, that they could come back with a couple of different percentage points, and because it will be coming back to council to vote on, that might be the time for us to look at the differences between different percentage points. Does that make... Okay.
Okay.
So I don't know how you reflect that in the motion, but...
Well, it'll be duly noted by the PUC
okay, thank you.
Board. Councillor Scotchy?
So quick question, so I gotta be honest, the 1,800 per bed was an oversight on my behalf when I was, honestly, I did miss that myself. Was that supposed to be that high though, 1,800 per bed? Was that supposed to be that high?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's the cost. So if you look at the table reflects, we'll look at the retirement homes that was mentioned earlier. That's a per bed cost, $998. That's a per bed cost as well. And when we look at apartments, bachelor apartments, 1 bedroom, it's $1,138. So it reflects a body in a building that uses the same linear assets for water and wastewater, whether they're stacked up a little bit tighter or they're laid out a little bit looser. So it still has the same resource draw as a per bed, whether it's a residential or a retirement or whether it's a bunkhouse. That's how the cost was formulated, was by a per bed cost, or by a per person per unit cost.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Solomon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to support this. I just need a little bit more information. So through you to administration, just so I understand it, if there's a supply line running outside the property and a person wants to build a bunkhouse and it's back in the property, do they pay the cost of the line from the supply line to the house, to the bunkhouse? Aside from this.
So the DUCs apply to future
Yeah,
growth.
I understand the development charge. I want to know the other part.
So the cost from their curb box to the bunkhouse is their cost entirely.
Yes, okay.
Over and above the DCs.
Okay. And this is 25% reduction that's being suggested here. The only, pardon me? Reduced to 25%. No. So 75%.
Mr. Sullivan, can you confirm that? His question? Sorry, just that he's confirming with 25%. What does that represent?
No, I just need to know that it's a 75% reduction
Yes.
from the fees recently approved.
Yes.
That's what this motion is, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, you know, I'm bending towards just saying yes and move on, but who picks up the 75%?
The 75%, the 75% has to be picked up by current ratepayers for infrastructure growth. These numbers are reflected based on our needs for the PUC for life cycle and future growth as industry comes on. So anything less than these numbers will have to be picked up again by the current ratepayers.
Is there, if I might ask one more, there's different categories of ratepayers, correct? There's commercial ratepayers, there's industrial ratepayers, there's, I assume, well, obviously residential ratepayers. Is it spread across all the classes of ratepayers, or is that 75% get picked up by the same category as?
No, it would be spread evenly amongst, it would be picked up by the budgets of the PUC, which is across the board from everyone.
I see. So a small residential house in Wallaceburg would be picking up that, or in Bothwell, or Blenheim, or Unga. No, not Unga. Highgate.
Currently, we're averaging about 1 or 2 bunkhouses a year. It's not like we're having 30 bunkhouses applied for every year. It's 1 or 2 bunkhouses, probably 1 on an average.
Okay. I just like to get to vote on it and move forward. But those answer my questions, thank you. At least I understand it better.
Okay, seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor C. McGregor, closing.
Just, yes, thank you. Just in closing, the one other thing that I would just like to point out, and Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for many of these projects, it would be a water charge only because they would, in those, a lot of those areas, they would be on septic systems, so they would not be paying wastewater charges. They would be paying water charges only in many of the scenarios.
That's correct, based on their location.
Which actually ends up being a jump from the current 121 to 249.50, basically.
Yeah, currently we have 1 greenhouse currently on wastewater. So normally they're in a rural setting, so they would
But
only
normally,
apply to the water side.
more often they're in a rural setting and on septic. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-1.
Number 17, infrastructure and engineering services.
Item 17A, 2019 vehicle and equipment replacement list.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move all 3 recommendations.
Councillor Pinsino.
I'll second it, Your Worship.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Item 17B, amendments to 2019 comprehensive user fee bylaw.
Councillor B. McGregor.
I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
And I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-1.
Item 17C, amending agreement number 1 to Public Transit Fund Transfer Payment Agreement between the Ministry of Transportation and the Municipality of Chatham-Kent.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Latimer.
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 17D, 2019 AOR's Municipal Public Works Trade Show.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Finn.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to make a comment. I think this conference or trade show coming to Chatham-Kent will have a very big impact on the municipality, similar to what the curling bonspiel had last fall, as well as a plowing match. It brings people to the municipality that wouldn't normally come here and get a taste of what Chatham-Kent has to offer. And I'd like to congratulate Glenn Harding, who's the spearhead for the area in doing the hard work and putting all this together. We congratulate you in being successful in securing this venue for Chatham-Kent. And as you realize that there's no tax dollar implications except for the service in kind that are being provided by the employees of Chatham-Kent. So a good opportunity to showcase Chatham-Kent, and congratulations on that. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 17E, municipal significant event, Combo Cup Blenheim.
Councillor Scotchy.
I'd like to move those recommendations. Sorry, and I want to actually speak on that really quick, if you don't mind.
Well,
Sorry.
wait till we get a seconder first.
Sorry,
Councillor Latimer.
I'll second that.
Okay, Councillor Scotchy.
Getting ahead of myself, I apologize, Your Worship. I just had a little bit of information sent over by the gentleman, some of the gentlemen that put on that this significant event. And just looking at some things, I just wanted to make sure that council are aware of that. In the past, this event's donated over $6,000 to childhood cancer. They've provided a TV for the Blenheim Memorial Arena. They did a $1,000 donation to Brain Cancer Foundation, significant donations to individuals through the community, as well as they've helped put post-secondary education through folks that are in Blenheim minor hockey. So I just wanted to let everybody know, hope for their support as they put a lot of this money directly towards the community of South Kent.
Seeing no other questions, put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Item 17F, motion by Councillor Sakachi regarding arena business plan.
Councillor Scotchy.
Whereas the municipality of Chatham-Kent is in the process of developing an arena business plan, may this plan include strategic ways to lower the ice rates where the resultant impact is possibly a reduction in task base, and B, a review of existing arena canteen operations to determine if operational and financial efficiencies can be achieved through municipality-wide purchasing agreements, coordinated menu development, and potential rebate systems. And then C, a review of existing marketing strategies and suggested options to encourage revenues and efficiencies.
Councillor Crew.
I'll second that.
Councillor Scotchy.
So the last gentleman that spoke in his deputation literally took about half the things that I was going to say formally. So instead of going through the whole process, I'm just going to kind of wrap it up in a nutshell. And I do have a couple kind of comments. Before I go into it, I do want to commend the fact that the administration, the community, as well as the past mayor and council has did an exceptional job to ensure that our 10 arenas remained open. And I think that, bringing these efficiencies that are required, it's important to also note that the fact that I think it's very beneficial that you guys have done everything that you can to maintain that. The big discussion for me around A is the fact that every time we get into touching base in regards to the arena usage and maybe some of the lacking is that the direct comparison comes into our ice rates. So I think it's very important. Councillor Harrigan at budget time had discussion in regards to potential cuts or the maneuvering, so to speak. And I think that this is something that's going to only start to become more often. the more our arena is going to decline. I think that there's going to be more difficult discussions. And I think as a council, one of the points that I had in here that was actually mentioned, that we have to look at these as community hubs. They're assets to our community. They're gathering places. And I think that strategically, it's beneficial for us to look at ways that we can lower the ice rates. That without me coming up with a number and saying a number, I think it's beneficial in the arena plan that we have multiple rates to look at in regards to the result of the, what it's going to do to the mill rate, so to speak. That's a little bit for A. And then for B, I just had a couple questions, if I can direct them to Mr. Kelly before I go through, if that's okay. If you don't mind, Thomas? So the existing arena right now, do we have a deal with Coca-Cola? Is that correct? Is that who our affiliation is with for the soft drinks and the beverages?
That level of detail I don't have handy.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do is basically, I don't foresee in speaking to people that there's going to be my main thing is that I think that it's beneficial that we start looking at the canteens as a whole instead of individually, and look at the efficiencies of the canteen. I'm going to give an example for yesterday. There was South Kent had the championship, the Pee Wee championship, and it was 2 South Kent teams. The arena had, I'm going to guesstimate, 400 to 500 people, and the canteen was closed after the first period. So I think that that's something there that there's been a lot of, in sitting and touching base with people on the board, there's a lot of times that happens, and I think it's very important that we all work together and communicate properly to ensure when we're having large functions, like in Ridgetown, if we're having university teams play, that we have a full functioning canteen. And like I said, I really appreciate the efforts you guys have done with the 3 arenas with public health in regards to the healthy snacks and that. But I do think that we have to look at exactly what it says: coordinated menus, potential rebates, and I can kind of go on. And then the last one is Mr. Bray in? I thought I seen him briefly, but did he exit?
Yes, he had to leave.
He did exit. So the marketing strategies as well. Do you have any information on that, Thomas? I see a couple of questions on the marketing strategies. Or so right now, if I wanted to sponsor the Zamboni, so to speak, or the put an advertisement on the boards, what would be my process right now?
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, we have a company that looks after that and manages that, and we receive a cut from that.
Is that a local company or?
I do not believe they're local. I'd have to check, though, on that.
So I guess it's just beneficial then. We're just going to see if this comes back, the plan comes back, and then I can ask more detailed questions to you prior. That way it gives you respectfully the opportunity to gather that information and look at it that way. It's not to put you on the spot, so thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Councillor Pincinel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation tonight by the Barrett Group. They are an example of how you can operate things efficiently, both winter and summer. In this motion, I would hope that in the business plan that they explore the outlying areas, as Councillor Sakachi said, and possibly come up with some sort of a middle ground to compete, because it's a big vicious circle. If you keep raising your rates because your arenas aren't being used, they're going to be used less. The marketing strategy should include promotion of events. Our website can be challenging at times. I think what needs to happen with that, we need a user-friendly, either an employee within the Civic Center here or whoever's looking after the IT part of it, where it's user-friendly for the arenas to either call in or email with what events they got coming up in their arenas to, they can promote them across the whole CK website. Also in the marketing, I think we need to do more promotion on summer programs within the arenas. Like the usage in Bothwell, they have almost as much usage in the summertime as they do the winter. And I think if like the Barrett Group has, I think, really got something going here, and if we can duplicate this, we can get our arenas where they are more viable. And I'm not sure they're ever going to come to a break-even position, but make them affordable, use them. They are the center focal points of the communities they're in, and I'm going to support this. I think this is definitely heading in the right direction.
Mr. Kelly, you want to make a comment and just generally what's happening now with what you're doing?
Yes, so thank you. So we've been working actually on this report for some time. It started with the meetings that the mayor had with all the different communities. This was a common theme. What can we do to make our arenas more competitive and used more often? So we have already spent significant time on this particular report. Our next step of the process is that we're going out to the various communities and we're going to share with them, here's some of our ideas, what do you think? And we have actually recommended to other communities the Bothwell model. And we know that Bothwell representatives have been very cooperative. To be honest though, we don't have another Bothwell group in other communities. So they've stepped up and managed this and helped with the marketing. We don't have staff to do that right now. So in the other communities where the arenas exist, there hasn't been that community involvement that we've seen in Bothwell. So that would be something really beneficial, and that's what we're going to also promote, that what can the communities do, like Bothwell has done, to try to promote this. So our intent is to be honest, we want to get the twin pad report completed first, and then we're working on this at the same time. It will probably follow the twin pad report in the May time period. So that's our plan, though. We want to get more community engagement and hear from everybody exactly what they think needs to be done. But I'm just saying, to be honest, we could use some help here. And Bothwell has been extremely helpful, and we would like to see that extended to other communities as well.
Councillor Pincinel.
Yeah, that's great. On another note, we should almost look at our managers as being part of this process as well, promoting and I know that they have a heavy workload, but honestly, they could be the biggest promoter of the whole process, promoting the events that are coming. Like, I know it's a challenge, but that almost should be part of their job description as well. Thanks.
Councillor Latimer.
I think it's just a question to maybe Councillor Sakachi and Thomas can verify. I'm just, in my head, I was expecting that the report that the administration was going to bring back to us would include these things. Was I wrong, Thomas? Are you just directing them specifically, Councillor Sakachi?
So I
Sorry,
touched base.
I was just going to go to Mr. Kelly just to confirm.
There's two questions.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it would include what exactly?
In my head, when I'm waiting for your report to come back about arena usage, I expected that these three things would be part of it. Was I wrong?
No, absolutely. That's what we've been working on.
Okay. So, Councillor Sakachi, did you in making this motion, were you just making sure that they included this, or you were directing, or I'm not too sure what was the what am I trying to say? What the reason was to go forward?
I understand the question. So I touched base with Mr. Kelly in regards to my motion. I also touched base with Mr. Bray. They touched base about the report. I'm putting this in so I know for certain that we are going to have strategic ways, multiple ways to lower the arena cost before next season. So if this comes back, the report comes back with one way, I think it's beneficial for council to have multiple ways that they can go and direct in that direction. Councillor Harrigan said some things in regards to closer to around budget time. We are in direct competition with our outlining communities. So it's great to have the report. I think it's beneficial that these things are in there for certain. And when I say ways, it's as plural as I think that it's beneficial for there to be more than one table, not to say we could do this or this. I think that it's beneficial to have multiple ways that we could lower the rates, be competitive with with outlying communities, and make our community sponsorship groups have more money to access to do things, because as of right now, you have community teams that are spending $40,000 to $50,000 a year on ice times, where other municipalities, those teams are spending 25 or 22. And I think that we need to have multiple directions to look at. And if we're going to have hard decisions to make in the future, I think that we have to weigh all our options in regards to the costing and not price ourselves out. As Councillor Pinsino said, he hit it right on the head, that we have to make sure that we're competing with the outlining areas. So I want to make sure that all these points are in and I didn't see much about the canteens and talking to people either. And I think that they should be streamlined. So,
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yeah, I want to thank the Bothwell Group for being here. It's every time they come, I mean, they should teach a class on how to engage with, how to do public engagement. So it's I was especially.
Wait, Mike's cutting out.
Well, especially happy to hear Mr. Hamilton talk about how individuals in their community are supportive and recognizing the need for renewal in Chatham as well. So I think it's great to hear that there's some support for breaking down some of those barriers between, or those perceived barriers between communities. I understand Councillor Sakatchi bringing this motion forward, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, I would hate to see the business plans and then find there's something missing that Councillor Sakatchi or someone else wanted, and then we were delayed even further. So I understand that he wanted to bring this in advance to make sure that that those items were included so that we could get on with this process. So I'm more than happy to support this tonight and look forward to that business plan coming forward, and I'll save my thoughts on cost of ice time for that period.
Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. My mind was just spinning after Councillor Pinsino spoke about the Bothwell Group, and they are second to none in citizen engagement, and Mr. Hamilton and Jackie Beattie. My mind was thinking when you were saying we needed more of those groups, have we asked anyone? And maybe we should.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have. And we've actually, talked to the Bothwell Group, and they're more than willing to share their success.
Sure.
Again, we don't have that type of strong committee focus, that community focus in other areas. And I'm just expressing that as a concern. I don't have the staff to start promoting all these summer programs. It's successful in Bothwell because they're doing the work, and that's staff we didn't have to add at budget times.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think somehow we need to encourage some sort of citizen engagement, and I'm sure you've already done it. But if anybody wants to help their arena flourish and be part of that community municipal partnership, I think they can just contact one of us, and we'll connect them. But it doesn't take a lot of people. It just needs some good, strong leadership in their community. So I don't know how we can market and engage people in communities. We need to get them more involved and more engaged. I think Mayor Caniff probably heard that out on the community trail, and he may have come across some of those leaders that can poke into a different direction with some support so that they get that confidence to move forward. The Bothwell Group didn't start yesterday, and but they are a force to be reckoned with if you look towards anything in their community. Thank you.
Councillor Solomon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion because it just, in effect, says here's some other things to consider that you'd like to see in the report. We're not debating arenas right now, but I would also, there's a couple things that I have a concern about that you can address at the same time as you address this, and that is, while you're addressing item A, one of the issues, of course, is that the Ridgetown, there is insufficient, it is a demographic problem, and there's insufficient, 10 years ago, there was insufficient participation in Ridgetown minor hockey, so it merged with Blenheim. Tilbury minor hockey, insufficient participation, hence insufficient ice usage, same with Ridgetown, merged with Chatham. Jeff isn't here, so I don't know what, there certainly was insufficient in Bothwell. I'm not sure whether they merged with Dresden or not. I don't know what happened there. So you got to consider those kind of things when you bring us a report also. And if you're looking at reducing ice rates, there is a concern that I have and that probably 50,000 other people have, and that is that you can't, a child in Tilbury who's playing in minor hockey in Chatham, and a child in Chatham, and one in Blenheim, and one in Bothwell, all ought to be treated the same when it comes time to how much they're going to have to pay to put a kid on the ice. I don't think you can discriminate because you happen to live in Bothwell to get a better rate. That, on the other hand, if you want to do it through area rating, you might want to consider that if it's so important. The other issue is, and I think Jackie, who I've known for since our kids played hockey together, which is a long time ago for the older two, one of the issues is, and she pointed it, I think she pointed out, maybe it was the other speaker, it is not the Bothwell Arena. It is the Bothwell Sports Center, I think is what they called it. And that may, and I think you've got to focus on the fact that ice isn't the be-all and end-all. Nobody's, you know, I think people focus on that too much. It's, as a community center, it might be repurposed for something else that is good for the community. Because they've done a wonderful job on other things, but the ice usage is still under 25%. So bring all those things back. I think I'm going to support this because I think it makes sense. But there's all sorts of things that you should bring back to us. Don't just focus. I mean, if you bring that, then at least give us the other side of the coin that says, yeah, but you can't treat a kid on Murray Street in Wallaceburg different than you treat a kid on Elm Street in Bothwell. It's just, or an adult. You got to, it's across the piece. You got to be fair all the way around. So I just, those are my comments. I don't expect any answer back. It's late at night. You're going to do a comprehensive report, and that's all that Councillor Scacchi is asking for, and I agree. But at least do it comprehensive so we don't have to have these little fights at the time.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote. Vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 17G, motion by Councillor Brock McGregor regarding asset management plan.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
I move that council direct administration to produce budget options for committee consideration with provision for no greater than a CPI rate of inflation and consistent with the projected approvals related to the asset management plan and taking into account the requirement for community consultation related to any significant impacts to assets of interest across the municipality.
Councillor Foss.
I'll second the motion.
Councillor B. McGregor, your microphone isn't working again, so.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple comments.
But if you can just talk, it's not coming through, so you can speak in someone else's.
Okay, so I know that this is listed under infrastructure and related to the asset management plan, but it's actually a budget item. So it's essentially just setting some directions so that administration can get working on a budget as in previous years, bringing us recommendations that are consistent with CPI and taking into account what we've already approved through our asset management planning. So pretty straightforward and just really providing a starting point so that can get going. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, let's put it to vote. Okay, let's put the right one up there. Here we go. It's up.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Number 18, Finance, Budget, and Information Technology Services.
Item 18A, assessment-based management policy.
Councillor B. McGregor. Councillor Finn.
I'll second.
Any questions? Councillor Harrigan.
Hi, just a quick question. So regarding the recommendation in the appendix with the actual assessment-based management policy, were there any changes made in the base management policy that we should be aware of? Or is it the same base management policy that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The assessment-based management policy, this is a new policy. It doesn't currently exist.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
Item 18B, 2018 request for encumbrance reserve.
Councillor Foss.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Hall.
I'll second.
Questions? Councillor Kirkwood-White.
Thank you very much. Just wondering, is this a typical move on an annual basis? Is this a motion that we typically approve on an annual basis?
Through Your Worship, yes, it is. This is an annual report we do.
Okay, I'm just looking at the amount of the money and wondering.
It's in the same approximate neighborhood that, we do year to year.
Okay, thanks.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-1.
Item 18C, motion by Councillor Harrigan regarding improving Chatham-Kent's budget process.
Thank you. So whereas the Chatham-Kent Council has a goal for open and transparent government, and whereas the budget process is crucial and important processes for short and long-term policymaking, strategy discussion, and goal setting within the community of Chatham-Kent that deserves to be continuously improved and enhanced, and whereas there's an opportunity to formally understand these opportunities ahead of next budget season, therefore be it resolved that Chatham-Kent live stream its Committee of the Whole budget deliberations, beginning with the 2020 budget discussions through its existing contract with Your TV, and that Finance solicit feedback from Council and EMT regarding the last budget process, asking for recommendations to improve future budget processes, and return to Council with a report and summary of their findings and suggested improvements for the 2020 budget process.
Councillor B. McGregor. Questions? Councillor Solomon.
Do I get to speak to it first or no?
Well, I just have a quick question.
Sorry, I was
since you
going to just go
recognize
back
it.
to the...
How much does it cost?
It's about $3,000.
Okay.
Well, it's depends. I mean, if we had 20 Committee of the Whole, then it's more, right? But yeah, so just,
Okay, Councillor Harrigan, go ahead.
yeah, it's about 1,000 per meeting, yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
So just quickly, after budget, I had an opportunity to reflect and discuss with some of my council colleagues and finance and members of the public, as I think many of us around the table did. So just really quickly, thank you to finance for all of their feedback and their responsiveness during the budget process and encouragement with me in making the motion. And thank you for Councillor B. McGregor for letting me potentially encroach on his territory as budget chair as a rookie councillor. And then just finally, really with a number of us campaigning on openness and transparency, when it came to budget, there were a number of people who commented on my social media page that they were surprised that they couldn't actually see the stream. People didn't understand that the Committee of the Whole wasn't live streamed, and there was good conversation around the benefit to this, and I think it's a really low cost for the benefit of people being more engaged in one of the most important processes that we as council participate in.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Yes, Councillor Harrigan, I agree. I think I've been saying to people for years, the most important council meetings that which is not a council meeting, but whatever, that's what people think. The most important council meetings we have are the ones that aren't televised. So this is a great idea because really this is council deliberations where we talk about all the money and taxes and, like tonight's been very, very exciting, but, I think the budget thing is probably a better bang for the buck. So thank you very much.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in, motion passes 16-0.
Item 18D, motion by Councillor Harrigan regarding Wheatley Community Fund.
Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you. So whereas the municipality is holding reserve funds by the community of Wheatley, and the community has requested a portion of these funds to be spent to enhance their own community, be it resolved that $10,000 be released to Wheatley Minor Soccer from the Wheatley Pool Reserve for soccer field repair and renovations.
Councillor Kirkwood-White.
I'll second that.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Mike, does every community have its own reserve fund?
Through your worship, this was funds that were specifically raised in Wheatley, originally with the intent of a pool. That didn't happen,
okay.
so this is just the residual funds.
Sure, okay, that makes sense, and thanks.
Councillor Adamer? Councillor Solomon?
Almost the same question. Are there any other pool reserve funds? And if so, where are they and how much are they?
I don't believe there are any additional reserve funds for pools.
So we didn't put any money aside for that memorial pool that got closed that we told would be built within, and it's never been rebuilt, 20 years? Okay.
This was funds that were specifically raised by the community, so that's what this is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McGrail?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. So my question is $10,000 is kind of like an even amount. Was there an RFP put in place? Where is this money going? How is it going to be spent? Who does the work, and how do we account for that money afterwards in receipts and everything like that?
So I would say that we as council don't really need to account for the work that's being done per se, in the sense that it was community-raised funds, and it's just being held in a bank account. But to answer your question, the BIA requested it. It's going towards repairing the soccer fields in Wheatley, so new netting. I think there are some soccer field repairs that the municipality isn't able to cover that the community is looking at. And this was requested by the BIA during the budget process. So, and in terms of your question about RFP, if it's a public fund, it doesn't meet the threshold that we would need for a formal RFP process. It's only $10,000. But the organization is a not-for-profit, so wouldn't have to follow any BPS directives of any kind.
Councilor McGrail?
I still think they need to be accountable. So I do believe that even through the BIA, that's community funds that we're holding. Is there a process here that we need to go through?
Through your worship, this is community raised funds. So because of that, basically we've been holding it. When they raised those funds, it was intended for a purpose originally. So when they are requesting these funds back, we're providing them the funds back. Their organizations, I think they're working with the BIA there as well, the recreation groups. They're accountable to each other, I think, for what they spend this money on.
And just to quickly add that both the BIA and Wheatley Minor Soccer would have an AGM, right, which would outline expenses and things like that at that point. When I said they weren't accountable, I meant they're not accountable to give a report back to us at council to how these dollars were spent. It's community money.
Seeing no other questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in, motion passes 16-0.
Number 19, Chief Administrative Office.
Item 19A, CK Plan 2035 Advisory Committee appointment.
Councillor Crew. Oh, sorry, Councillor Harrigan.
Happy to make the recommendation as it sits.
Councillor Crew.
I'll second that.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in, motion passes 16-0.
Item 19B, Community Program Fund Link. We're seeking some direction from council regarding the nature of the committee.
Okay, can you just give a little update here? I guess there's three options and we'll be... Councillor Kirkwood-White?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to make a motion that council adopt option B, advisory committee of council. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions once I get a seconder for the motion.
Councillor Harrigan?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. I wanted to express my thanks to Don Shropshire and John Norton and Amy Wilcox and Judy Smith for meeting with me on Friday morning to discuss this matter, and this report that you have in front of you is as a result of that meeting. I have a couple of comments. The first being that option B most closely aligns to the intent of my original motion to engage more members of the public on this Community Partnership Citizen Review Committee. I noticed in the report that the word citizen review didn't appear, and I thought that was interesting. But I did have a couple of questions. The first being that on page 2 it outlines the types of grants that are part of this Community Partnership Fund in the amount of $798 plus. Core grants represent $236,740, and I understand that there are multi-year commitments that are included in that amount that have already been committed to organizations. The second is the partnership development of $387,000 that we approved at council. So I have a question with regard to who is going to make the recommendations back to council on how that $387,000 is allocated. And then the highlighted amount of $175,000, if I'm reading this report correctly, is the amount that the citizens will actually recommend back to council. So if I can get some clarification on the other two questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try. Just if I can break this down, you can walk me through if I missed part of that. With respect to the core grants, council received recommendations, or did receive recommendations last fall for 4-year grants for the term of council. Those have already been approved. The partnership development grants, I agree, that would be exactly what this committee would be recommending to council. And given that if your recommendation is approved to be a committee of council, it would be the citizens group that would evaluate the different project opportunities and to make that recommendation to council. That was my understanding of how your recommendation is being worded.
Dawn, just for clarification, sorry, in the paragraph, where is it? Above the chart, it says...
To clarify the responsibility, that piece?
Yeah, yes, it says, the committee is not responsible for core grant review, senior grants, senior center grants, or the new funds allocated to the community development unit. So if the $387,000 is not going to be reviewed by the committee, who is going to make those recommendations back to council for approval?
The discussion that we had last week with Councillor Kirkwood-White, the core grants, as I've just explained, have already been apportioned, so those are off the table for this
Right.
current year.
Right.
There was a recommendation that when council increased the amount of budgeted amount for core grants, that we would be going back and making some recommendations as to how that would be dispersed or allocated, and that would be I thought that was part of the evaluation process. The current grants in front of us, I thought, which was going to be dealt with by the committee matrix, would be the 175. So I thought we owed a report to council for the 387, is what I understood. That we would still have to come back. As we explained to council at our last meeting, there was 2 different things happening. One is we had approximately $175,000 that was in the original pool of funds that council had, that was considered in the budget, and that was to be dispersed by the committee, or recommendations by the committee, to have council's approval. And I thought the partnership development, new dollars approved during the 2019 budget was going to be subject to a report to council, and that still had to be evaluated in terms of some discussions. That's how I understood that that was to be dealt with. So council approves all of the funds. The 175 is a piece that the group has to wrap their arms around relatively quickly so people can do things in the summer. And then the 387, that has not been dispersed yet. That's something that we're going to have to get some input from the committee members, and council will then have to consider. The clerk's shaking her head like she's in agreement with my memory, but that doesn't...
So the citizens will actually have a role to play in making recommendations about how that 387 gets allocated? Okay. That's not the way this reads. That's...
So we have a request for council to clarify, and we had some discussion last time about the clarification about whether council wishes this to be a committee of council or a committee of administration. And one of the key points is who's going to hold the pen in crafting the recommendations that council will consider. If your recommendation that we choose option B, if that's supported or approved by council, then that advisory committee to council will, with some support from Amy or the one or more administrative staff, will then be responsible for reviewing the recommendations and making recommendations to council as to how the money would be allocated. That's $175,000 out of the gate. Subsequent to that, we discussed having a review of the other disbursement of monies, and that would come back to council in a report of what that was part of the evaluation process. And so then it would be the same. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out until we do the evaluation, so I don't know how to answer that question. I'm assuming if it's a committee of council, then they would make recommendations to council. There's not an intent for administration to do anything different with that monies.
Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just when I was working with Amy on the report on Friday afternoon, the paragraph that's written there on the chart below is those core grants and the partnership developments are two separate conversations, and there will be a specific report on core grants. There's a specific report on the partnership development of that new $387. All this report and this advisory committee would be working towards is the $175 of the annual grant program. So that's all that this report's about. There is a separate report coming from Amy with regards to the partnership development, and that'll be approved by council, and the committee will not have anything to do with that at this time.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Foss.
I'm along the same line. I'm confused because I thought the 387 was what the committee was designed to review when we put this whole motion together.
I'm not sure where else we can take the discussion. I'm sorry, there's some confusion around the piece. We're trying to get some clarity from council as to whether you'd like the volunteer members of our community to hold the pen and make recommendations to council, or whether you'd like administration to do that. We're quite comfortable with either, but the last time we had the discussion, I think we were sitting on the fence and it wasn't clear. So if council wants to empower the committee of council to make recommendations, then that's council's prerogative to do so.
Councillor Foss, followed by Councillor Crew.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my first question is option A, is that exactly the way the existing program works?
Yes.
And the report comes back for council's final approval.
Sorry, Councillor Foss, if I can correct my last statement. In any or all of these cases, the intent was that there would be additional input from community members. I think that was something that Councillor Kirkwood-White spoke to a number of different times in terms of preparing the motion. And has been discussed a couple of times tonight. There was a number of council members that ran on a ticket of having increased community engagement. So I think that was part of the intent. The question we got caught up on last time is a bit of a procedural issue, and that's who does council want holding the pen or making the recommendations in the report? And it really got down to the nub of it is if there's a difference of opinion between members in the community making a recommendation and what administration would be recommending, what what trumps the other in terms of making the recommendation to council. So I think Councillor Kirkwood-White has made it clear that her preference would be to have a committee of council, in which case council would be receiving a recommendation from the community groups. They would receive some staff support. Right now, it would be from Amy Wilcox to, craft the report, to guide them through the matrix, but it would be the committee of council and made up of the volunteers that would be making that decision. That's my understanding of the motion.
Okay, I guess I aired my concerns at the time that Councillor Kirkwood-White brought her motion regarding community participation, and I wasn't in favor of that. I think for several reasons, because of conflicts of interest, people being a bit biased on certain decision making, but set that aside. In the option B is still allowing council to have a participation in that program. Well, it states there that the option is there for that to happen. That tells me that that can happen and probably will happen. My theory is, and it has been from the beginning, is that the system works well the way it is. Why tamper with it? We've had success. The only problem we've had over the years is there hasn't been enough money in that program. Now we've got more money, and apparently that's not all going there, but that's a debate for another day, I guess. But in my opinion, leave it alone. It's working well. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Councillor Crew?
Thank you. I'm agreeing with Councillor Foss. Option B just leaves too much hands-on for council in somewhere where we're handing dollars out. Yes, it does. It is an option for council to appoint members. We have terms of reference. We can appoint people. That is just too hands-on for something that we are an open, ethical granting process for our community. I don't want anything to destroy the credibility of this grant. It's a lot of money, and our community can do a lot of good with it. All I see when I see council, too many council members in there, we can appoint council, we'll pick the people. I'm like, oh boy, this is a dog's breakfast waiting to happen. If this fails, I would move option A, but the only thing in option A, I would like it to say, if I get the opportunity, I guess, is that it would be the committee will consist of members of the public and staff. That's all. That's all I have to say. I can't support option B.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you. So I am absolutely supportive of this being an advisory committee of council, mainly because I think if we're going to err on the side of something being too bureaucratically run or overly open, transparent council run, then I would rather have it be more run by members of the community driving the bus with the potential for council members to get involved. I hear your concerns, Councillor Crew, I really do. I think we can have conversations on council about restricting, because it's an option, and deciding as a council that we want to restrict council membership to this advisory committee of council to potentially mitigate that risk, because I hear that it's there. But I would much rather have these community grants be decided in a process that's very open, that comes openly to council, where we can see and review the minutes, where we can see what the matrices look like, and have that community involvement and engagement, because at the end of the day, it also prevents any kind of accusation about things happening inside the municipality that most of us around the table know really aren't happening, but it just brings that transparency forward. And I think about other committees of council that deal with confidential economic development files, or planning for what our priorities are going to be in the long term, right? And those are other big decisions that our community holds. So if our community members and citizens can review those items, I think it's equally as important to review these items. The element in the report that I have concern around is still that lack of clarity about the new dollars, that $387,000. So I think, Don, what I'm hearing from you is that if council appoints this advisory committee of council, then that council would review the framework, potential usage, things like that, and then provide that report to council. Is that
Thank you.
correct?
That's ostensibly correct. The piece with the $387,000, that was council's deliberations during the budget, added that additional amount. So clearly it has to be distributed to our different community groups. The challenge is we haven't really had an opportunity to make any recommendations or consideration for council as to how that would be split. Council may decide that there's some advantages to having additional monies in the core grants. Council may decide that there's certain activities within our community that deserve more ongoing support. Like we've had discussions around, as an example, some of our museums that are run, the Wallaceburg Museum, the Buxton facility. If we cut back a great deal in there, some of their grants, they've told us that they might have to close their doors. I mean, so, council then would have to make a deliberation as to whether that's something you'd want to have as a core grant process or something different. We may have more money going to community activities. We just haven't had the opportunity to provide any sort of analysis to that since the budget process. And the challenge that we're having is we have a number of community groups that are lined up at the door right now and saying we've got a lot of stuff we want to do this year, this summer, and if we don't give them get on with the approval process with 175, we might be caught. So I believe the intent is, let's come back, do some analysis. We'll have the benefit of having hopefully 8 members of the community that can help guide some of that discussion and process, and then we'll have the opportunity to come back to council. And whether they're a committee of council or advisory council, either one works. We still have to come back and do the analysis. Council still has to give us some direction. That's where the ambiguity is, and I apologize for that. We just haven't had an opportunity to deal with that question.
So what I'm hearing in that then is this advisory committee of council, their first priority will be to review the annual grant program, that $175,000.
I hope the first thing to do is decide how the 175 will be spent,
Yeah.
and then we have some time to deal with that
Have
before we have to get
discussions
on
later.
it.
Yeah, so it'd be my expectation then that that $387,000 that we just added into that account is a conversation that's had with this committee. Okay, wonderful.
Councillor B. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I agree with Councillor Crew and Councillor Foss that I think option A is a better option. I do think it still promotes a transparent process. I think that those matrices we use need to be publicly available. We need to make sure that we're engaging with the community and talking about what they want to see the application process look like. And I think we can do all of that under that administrative committee. And I think that as we go through these types of processes, when we're trying to allocate funds, it has to be a process that's very straightforward, that doesn't discriminate based on political affiliation, community, relationship between council members, relationship between community members. And I think that you run the risk when you move to an advisory committee of council in getting into that situation. And then you run the risk of council having to change some of those decisions and having an advisory committee you're no longer listening to, which, as we've seen in the past, is something that can happen. So I think that the administrative committee, which still is going to have community members on it, but no council members on it, works on these matrices, shows us a process that's going to work, that has public input, that will be transparent. I think that's the way that we make this process the most simple, the most transparent, and the most equitable across communities. So I don't believe it should be an advisory committee of council. I think that I'm supportive of if we get there going with option A instead of option B.
Councillor Pincinel.
Thank you, Worship. I could support option B if bullet number 2 was removed. Otherwise, I can't support it.
Thank you. This is council's, and what I think Judy's and Amy have worked out in the, with some advice from legal counsel and discussions with myself, is they've tried to paint a picture of the range of different committees that council currently has. So I don't hear anybody looking for the authoritative committee. That would be like our, where you've delegated authority to actually grant the money. In either case, council's going to be the ones making the decision. We're really deciding whether A or B are appropriate. And I think Councillor Pincinel's request or question about the option to appoint council members to this committee is the one you had some concerns about. That is just a reflection that we do have other committees of council where council members sit on the committee, and that's why it was included in the report. So it's completely council's discretion as to how you'd like to have that set up.
Councillor Kirkwood-White, are you amenable to
Yeah,
deleting
it was
that?
never my intent that council members, from the conversation on my original motion way back, it was never my intention that any council members would serve on this committee. So if you can get rid of that bullet, I,
Councillor Harrigan, are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Sakachi.
This is just a process question for Ms. Smith. Can we put this to vote, like with, right now, the A's and B, just because everyone keeps talking, keeps like it's going in circles?
I think you're the last, we're ready
Okay,
to
well,
go
perfect,
right
'cause
after
that's what
you're done.
I just think that it's beneficial just to figure this out and move forward, because we've been talking about the same process for quite some
Okay.
time and extensively.
So we'll vote on this. If it's turned down, then we will revert to another option then. Put it to vote.
Just to clarify the bullet point, again, as the CAO indicated, it's just, it says option to appoint. It was just trying to outline, you have the option to appoint a counselor in advisory. When you go with the terms of reference, we have made note that we would include that the membership would not include a council member, but we don't need to amend the motion. All votes are in. Motion fails 6-10.
Okay, so that opens it up to option A or option C. Councillor Foss.
I'd like to move that we, with option A.
Councillor Crew.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've already had all the discussion. Councillor Solomon, we haven't heard from you, so go ahead.
No, and it's going to be very quick. I just hope that if this does pass, that somebody communicate that the buck stops here. So no matter what recommendation comes back, we aren't here to rubber stamp. We're here to consider it and make a decision. But they should know that up front, not to be disappointed if what recommendation they make isn't necessarily the decision we make. Don't want to, because I heard Councilor McGregor, and I agree. But people have to know, serving on these committees, that the buck stops here. Should know it up front.
Councillor Foss, closing statement.
I guess that just opens the door up for where we were to start with. You know, we didn't have that option before. It was basically come to council. We approved it, but if I'm hearing correctly, it looks like that we're going to be able to change the decision of that committee, and I don't think that we've done that before. So. You know, I'm very confused, I guess, as to where we go with that, so I probably need some clarification.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Solomon is reflecting what the current situation is. We have a committee of administration that will write the report. That report will be based on the best advice we receive from our 8 appointees from the community, who will be giving us additional insight from their perspective. That recommendation, as it has in the past, will be coming to council. Council has the authority to pass or not to approve any of the recommendations from the committee. The difference is we're now going to have 8 additional members from the public that will be able to provide some additional insight, but council has the authority. And that's no different than we have ever had.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Bondi.
So in that, the word committee can is going to be changed?
Which one?
Where you said committee can consist of members of the public and or staff, there will be members of the public on it?
Under option A, committee can consist of members of the public or staff. And I believe based on the previous direction we received from council, we've gone out. We've already started the recruitment process for members of the public. And I believe there were 8 spaces or 8 spots from the member of the public, and I believe 5 staff. Based on the administrative piece.
So can we change that word can to will consist?
I'm serving at the pleasure of council.
Councillor Foss, are you okay with changing the can to will?
So I just, if you want to make that an extra amendment, I would say that you make the amendment. my motion is as it stands.
All right, so it's, the mover says keep the way it is, so we'll proceed on with that. Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Although I voted for B, I support A, but both of them, I think it is kind of important for the public to know that both A and B, the final bullet is that whatever kind of spending would be brought to council for final approval. It's only C that does not have that. And, you know, we're talking about $800,000, so I think it's probably a good idea that we do have the authority to say, well, maybe that's not a very good idea. That's kind of why we got elected, I think. So I was happy with B and I'm happy with A, but most importantly, I'm happy with the last bullet point in both A and B. Thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 14-2.
20, corporate services.
20A, Business Improvement Area, Board of Management appointments.
Councillor Hall?
I will move the recommendations.
Councillor Pincino?
I will second them.
Any questions? Seeing none, put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Item 20B, Appointment Bylaw.
Councillor Solomon?
I'll move that.
Councillor Kirkwood-White?
Second?
Any questions? Seeing none, put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 15-0.
Item 20C, Integrity Commissioner Investigation, interim report related to the serious breach of protocol.
Councillor Solomon?
Thank you. I move the report be received for information and no action be taken.
Second, or Councillor Pincino?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Any questions? Seeing none, show of hands, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 21, closed session report. Councillor Crew, I think you're going to sub in.
I didn't realize we were there. Closed session report absent were Councilors Oche and Finn. Council directed administration on A, personnel matters about an identifiable individual regarding Integris Power Lines, Inc. Board appointment, Section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001. Labor relations or employee negotiations with regard to ONA, RVG, ONA, Public Health, and Unifor RVG negotiations. Section 239 2D Municipal Act 2001. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to the Integrity Commission investigation. Section 239 2F of the Municipal Act 2001.
Second.
I'll second it.
Second. Councillor B. McGregor, any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 22, approval of communication items. Councillor Pincino?
So move.
Yes. Yes, I see that. Okay. Where's Jamie? Okay, we're on 22A. So I guess Councillor Pincino and then Councillor McGrail. Are you second that? Any questions?
Sure.
Councilor
Can I
Grail.
proceed? Sure. I'd like to bring forth, with at this point, the resolution brought to us by Ag Medica in this section here. I'd like to support Ag Medica to help assist them in their aspirations to become a major player in the cannabis space in Canada and internationally. So I would like to move that we support their letter that's within our package here and endorse them as set out.
Seconder for that? Councilor Pinsino. Any questions? Seeing none, let's put it to vote.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-0.
And so I got a motion as well to accept all the communication items. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Non-agenda business. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have a petition here that was put out and signed by about 25 homes on Middle Line coming into Charing Cross. They are requesting that we as a municipality begin to address the issue of high-speed traffic moving through Charing Cross on Middle Line. Solutions could include reducing speed limits, extending the reduced speed zones to further outside of the community, or any other measures deemed appropriate by staff and residents. There are concerns there in regards to how quickly those vehicles need to come to a stop or accelerate as they're heading in and out. There's a couple of bus stops on the list as well. So, learning my lesson from the last time, I'd like to present this to Mr. Kelly. I'd also like to ask Mr. Kelly for some sort of update as to where we are as far as reviewing all of our speed limits across the municipality.
Thank you, Mayor. So anytime we have a request like this, our first action is we work very closely with CK Police, and they will go out and conduct a study and really look at enforcement first off. It's the quickest, fastest thing we can do. And any resident, by the way, can call up 360-1998, and if they have a speed concern, they can ask that, and Chief Khan and his team are very reactive, and they go out there and they go to that area. So, and it's extremely effective as well. The second line of defense we have is the displays where you're measuring your speed. Those are actually very effective as well. We only have one pair, and any community can ask for that to be moved to that area for 1 week at a time, and that's also been very effective. The third option is that we would go out and do a speed study. When you state that, what are we doing to look at speeds throughout CK, that's really part of our master plan. And we've had one public engagement that will be completed at the end of this year. And we're working through that process now.
So I think you touched on the last point there. When do we expect that master plan to be completed?
Yep, we're targeting at the end of this year.
Okay,
Transportation master plan.
Right, the transportation master plan. So hang on, you're anticipating the entire transportation master plan to be completed this year?
That's the target right now with the consultant.
Okay, I'm going to present this petition to you after the meeting, of course, and I will forward the contact information. It would be my expectation that you would potentially reach out to the individual whose contact I provide you with to go over some of those options, okay? Wonderful, thank you.
Seeing no others, we'll go to a reading of the bylaw, first and second reading. Councillor Solomon, Councillor B. McGregor, all in favor? Opposed? Third and final reading. Councillor Pinsino, Councillor Wright, all in favor? Opposed? Councillor Crew? You got to do the resolution, council, closed session adjournment. Putting all the pressure on you. Yeah.
All right. They just handed me one paper. That Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, April 15th, 2019, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
Councilor Pinsino, Councilor Latimer, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.